So today we're going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We're now on to episode 51 of this series. In the last episode, we began the era of aggression, and the World War III era officially ended. And if you haven't seen the last episode, sorry, this is going to look really weird to you, but you probably should have went and watched that last episode. Also, we have flipped from the first 50, and we're now in the second half of the WICSO series. I think I want to go to 100 episodes. I'm not 100% sure. We'll see. And yeah, so if you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Help us get to 200,000 subscribers. And let's go ahead and begin. So in this video, we're going to be looking at kind of the after effects of World War III. More so looking at all these light green dots because they mean something. And this isn't even all of them. A lot of the light green dots didn't even transfer over. Here's actually all of them. As you can see, there's a bunch up in the Baltics, there's a bunch over here in Asia that aren't there, there's even a lot more in the old empire which aren't being shown. So I think my solution to that is just getting rid of all the dots in general. Yeah, these are all radiated areas. Sure, there's some cities that have been destroyed, and maybe I should go into the layer that has all the cities and get rid of some of those dots. But you know, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, those are actual cities in real life that do still exist, and these bombs that were dropped on these cities were even smaller than those bombs. So I think we're just gonna keep all of the major city dots. But do know that the world is reeling in from nuclear fallout. It's not good. The whole world is kind of in a semi-nuclear winter right now, and a few countries are completely crippled from the amount of bombs that were dropped on them. We will review those countries here in a second, but I believe that that is all the dots, and this map is clean for the first time in a couple of episodes. It's been a while. But now we're going to take a look at the alliances of the world, because obviously with the collapse of the old empire and the loss of a few countries, the alliances have of course changed. So bouncing back into the past real quick, we can first add back all of the OG cross-team countries. This includes Texas, West Africa, and the Dark Cyan team and the Orange team, and then of course all of the Central Asian countries, the Libyan and the Golden countries. These guys do not count as square team members, or sorry, cross team members, because they joined the war after it had already began. Speaking of that, they will go ahead and of course continue to have their current alliance, and they will add the purple team down here to it as well. And then we have the circle alliance over here between China and its allies. That still looks exactly the same with these four, just minus one in South China. Now, as for Korea and Vietnam, they never formed an official alliance. They just formed a coalition against China, which means that they aren't in an alliance. And now for the last alliance, the Square Alliance. This includes Norway. Finland joined after the war had already started, so they do not count. But it does include the white country, who does still exist at this point. Does not include the purple country, who joined after the war started. But it does include Iberia, as well as America. And that reminds me, we needed to add Mexico to the Circle Alliance. All right, and there we go. So I do believe that is everybody, I hope. I did kind of delete a few alliances on this layer on accident, or I don't know what I was doing, but they're not all here. So I really hope I'm not missing anything, but if I am, let me know in the comments. Anyway, goodbye to the mess that was World War III, and welcome to, once again, the Age of Aggression. Now, there are a few things that we still need to cover following the collapse of the old empire, and most obviously, their economical alliance that doesn't really exist anymore. They were the key founder of it, which means that without them, it doesn't really function well, and we can get rid of all of these green right triangles in any of these countries, because once again, old empire, without their existence, their economical alliance also doesn't exist. That's a big ouchie for a lot of countries, because first of all, you were relying on the old empire for trade and stuff, and second of all, yeah, just without the old empire in general, the world is kind of cooked economically. Like, I remember when the Lime team collapsed, that crashed the economy of the world. The old empire controlled a good portion of the economy of the world, and without them, it crashed again. The world goes into its second Great Depression. All right, so everyone is feeling pretty good after the war, except for a few of these guys. Most notably, this country right here is going to collapse. Not to the fault of their own. They got nuked like 4 times, and that simply is just too many times. That's all right though, because they will be annexed by their following allies. So it's not like the land is going completely to waste. They will just be occupied once again by their own allies, and actually just full on annexed. They are gone. Oh, the religion map isn't updated. And by that, I mean, this isn't updated. Well, we know that the gold team won the war, sort of, in their own way. So we can make a pretty good prediction as to what would happen to these religious groups that are existing over here. Not good things. Yeah, that's definitely shrinking a lot. And oh no, this one's shrinking as well. Okay, well, okay. All right, so the gold team is still doing their genocidal things in Africa. I'm pretty sure we all figured that that would happen since they won. No one can really tell them no anymore. The old empire isn't going to threaten them. India probably would, and they will, but India is reeling from the crash of the world economy, so they're not going to do too much. Now, we are going to do power rankings in this video, but before that, we need to cover the most important event following World War III, and that is the collapse of Russia. Hey, I did say that Russia collapsed in the war video. I said that they collapsed. I said that their government kind of, just failed, and then they started losing a lot of land, and then the military kind of gave up. Russia collapsed. Now, they were able to reform a government to work out the peace deal. They were able to do that, obviously. They got some land and some occupations. But the nuclear strikes that happened across Russia, there were a lot of them, and just like how it kind of fractured the old empire apart, it's going to fracture Russia apart. Almost forgot to make a thumbnail for this video. That would have been catastrophic. But now, the Russian government is, well, they weren't able to agree on a new way to reform, and there's too many potential uprisings that would take place to undermine a new Russian government, and therefore, they're just going to agree to divide this thing up. Now, Russia has been around for a very long time, so it's going to be interesting to see what countries they decide to release, what countries they decide don't need to be released, and what countries they decide to draw new borders for. Let's take a look at how the Russian Federation officially collapses following the end of World War III and the collapse of the global economy. First of all, we have the releasing of the Estonian country. Y'all remember this thing? Because I almost don't. Now, I do remember them having this coastal area right here, these two provinces, but I decided to give that over to Poland because it would look stupid. But we have Estonia coming back, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is the same Estonia that we saw in episode 17, for example. It's not, because that was hundreds of years ago. It's the same color. I might change that. Honestly, I do like the red, even though there is a red country right there. Spoiler alert, they may not be there for very long. So don't worry about that. But Estonia is the first country released by Russia. Oh, episode 17 was the one where the red team went on that crazy conquest. But now we move down to the military occupation area of Russia. This is where things get a little bit interesting because their military, of course, is going to leave this. And this will form into its own country. In fact, it's going to form into two of its own countries. The left side will be the gold country, not the gold country, a gold country. Just coloring it the same color because I like to keep it, similar. Not the same gold country that was in World War I. Not the same gold country that was on this map hundreds of years ago in like the 1500s or 1400s. Not the same. Maybe it has the same culture, but obviously it's not the same country from hundreds, 500 years ago or whatever it was. Same capital city though. It's kind of suspicious. Estonia, you also need a capital. That city was your capital that no longer exists. Thank you, nuclear bombs. So your new one will be right about here. That's actually where their capital is in real life, so that works. Anyway, now we get down to this country right here. They will be a dark gray color. I think we need some of that over here, especially with all these light colors. And their capital city will be right here. Now we're moving back up north to northern Russia, where we will see the return of two familiar faces. One way more familiar than the other, but still two familiar faces if you know your history. It's crazy that you could teach a whole course of subject of history just for the WICSO series. Insanity. But first of all, we have what should be a familiar color to all of you. The dark red Russian country has come back, and they are a little bit bigger than they were before, not gonna lie. But that is because my lazy bum did not go ahead and draw in the provinces during this time period, so it's not accurate to what their shape was originally. Especially over here, more specifically, this area is fine. This is correct. But once you get to like this point and over, it definitely did not look like this. But this is what we have. It's all right. I'm sure they're fine with getting more land. I don't think they would complain. Anyway, they will make their capital city, of course, what it was back then. And then we will see the releasing of the orange country right here. They are now back into existence, and their capital city lies right here. So these pivotal northern Russian areas that were very important during World War III have all gone back to their respective countries, being Estonia, Poland, this orange country, and then the red country. These guys, I feel like they're recent enough. Now, maybe not Estonia and the orange country. Well, I mean, they were there in episode 23. After World War I, which was in the late 1800s, it's 2000 now, about 100 years. That's okay. Poland lasted that long in real life, so I feel like it's not too ridiculous to bring these guys back. Whereas, bringing back like the gold country from episode 1 or like 3 or 4, that would be ridiculous. Anyway, there's still some land that needs to be divided up in Russia, specifically over here in the central region. Now, there will be a little bit of a compromise made. This country that's been bullied by everybody, yeah, they're going to get some land out of this. There's a little bit of reparations. And that's a whole lot of reparation. But nonetheless, that is exactly what they are given. And now the seafoam green country is back on the rise. Let's go. Now, as for the rest of Central Asia, there are a few countries that I'm going to bring back. And this is from episode 33. So when I'm recording this now, that wasn't that long ago. But when you're seeing this video, that was a long time ago. You're seeing this on like the second week of February. I'm on the third week of January, bro. Crazy. Oh, but guess who didn't do the provinces by that time? So yeah, they're going to be the same color, not the same country though. Taking that back. Good job, AdizzPro. You suck. But the country that we're bringing back right here is going to be this country is going to be the teal country. It didn't look like this when it existed a while ago, but you know, maybe they decided to change their borders. This border right here, that's correct, but this is not. So I mean, it's whatever. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the exact same country. I'm just coloring it the same color because the flow of colors that I used to have works. Who would have known? Sometimes it gets a little too repetitive with the colors. Like, for example, in Europe, there's a little too much green for my liking, but I can't do anything about that until one of these three countries dies. So it's going to be like that forever. Or is it? The next country is this one. If you remember it, it is now back. And luckily enough for the gold team, the Russians agreed to give them this province. It's kind of like a thank you for leaving the war early on and not continuing to invade us. We're collapsing now, so you can have it. We're not going to do anything with it. But now to the discussment of many countries in Central Asia, the dark blue team returns. We all know this one. This one caused a lot of issues. They got annexed by Russia at one point, but they were throwing hands with... I mean, remember the bloodiness of this area? Russia stopped that from happening, but Russia's collapsing, so I mean, what's stopping them from doing it again? And the full extent of the green team, now I know they were here in episode 1. I know it's not the same green team, not the same government, obviously, but it's the same people, same religion, same culture. It's the descendant of the green team, same color too. But they used to like kind of do that and over here, and honestly up here too. They were all over the place over here, but slowly over time, the red team and eventually the old empire forced them over to Central Asia and like Kazakhstan or southern Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. And this is kind of like their get back right here. They now own this land, which is where their ancestors presided, but that was thousands of years ago. So anyway, Russia still collapsing. We got to continue on with that. Now for a big one. Boom. We got a big boy brown team country over here in central Russia, and I will add the capitals after I finish releasing all the Russian states. Speaking of, y'all see this right here? Like this kind of weird round thing right here? Yeah, I think that was a country a really long time ago. It looks familiar. Oh my god, I found it in episode 19, the dark blue country. I'm not bringing it back, but I thought that is pretty notable to find that right there. It's like a fossil. Anyway, the new countries from here on out, they will not be brought back countries, so we can go ahead and like I said, divide up the rest of Russia. All right, here's country number Here's country number uno, país número dos, país número tres, y finalmente país número cuatro. Y bien. Okay, no more Spanish, but we have our final country here, leaving the Russian state in the middle there. Do we color it a new color? I think we do, and nope, not that. Struggling to find colors here because there's just so many all of a sudden. Hesitant to do another green country, but it kind of helps with the relief, so we'll do that. We'll color it this color. And Russia as a state no longer exists. What is happening in the Civilization series? Well, this is what happens when you nuke each other to oblivion. You collapse. Yeah. I hope that was apparent when the nuclear war started and about 20 bombs were launched into each other, and then 20 more bombs were launched later on, and then like 20 more later on. So if it wasn't evident that nuking each other into oblivion would cause the collapse of not just the old empire, but Russia as well, there we go. Now, of course, China also got nuked, but they didn't get nuked into oblivion. They just got nuked, and most of their major cities were fine, whereas these two lost pretty much all of their major cities. So, yeah. But anyway, time for the capitals. I'll go through this real quick. We have one there, over here. I might actually just try to do this all in one clip, so I got to yap a little bit, but there we go. Now to the dark blue, theirs can be right there. I do remember this being the capital of this country. They're not going to make the same mistake twice. They'll do that one there. And I think that's it. All right, that was relatively quick. Anyway, how are we feeling about our new map of the world? Yeah, it looks like we went back in time, but this is the modern world. This is like 2000, 2001-ish now, maybe. Anyway, the world is going to come together and try to form a United Nations. Now, of course, the UN was created after World War II. In real life, it needed to be created because the League of Nations failed after World War I. And the world attempted this sort of after World War II, not after World War I, because World War I was more of like a regional conflict that sort of had outside influence. World War II was a world war, and World War III, of course, was also a world war. But now after the Second World War, everyone's like, okay, we need to make sure that doesn't happen again. So let's attempt to make let's try to make a United Nations. And this thing is going to be called the Organization of States, or the OS. And how do you know if a country is in the OS? Well, on a new layer, if the country is in the OS, their capital city will be colored in white. And now we see that the capital city of the brown team, and I can flip this on and off, so it's not like it's permanently white, but we see that the capital of the brown team is white, as in they are an OS member, and that's because they are one of the founding nations of the OS, as well as the purple team, India, China, Korea, and finally Norway. Now, there are a few countries that feel like that they should have gotten this founding status, like France, for example, but the truth of the matter is, if you weren't involved in World War II or III in some way, then you're not going to get that. Now, as for India, why are they founding members? Well, it's because India is the strongest country in the world right now. Every other country is not strong anymore. China is no longer number 2. They got whipped. Russia and the old empire obviously got whipped. They don't exist anymore, which leaves India at number 1. They were number 4 previously, and they are one of the founding members of this alliance, which is an alliance. It's the UN, basically. It's the same functions as the UN. Now, there will, of course, be a lot of countries that are lining up to join this thing, and almost all of them are the brand new nations that exist throughout the old Empyrean and Russian lands that just got divided up. So, every single one of these Arabian countries are going to join the OS. We have the Greek team joining it, as well as the Orange team. And then, as we saw in Arabia, we see all of these Russian states end up joining the OS. We also see Finland join, Estonia, and the Orange team, Russian states. And into Central Asia, we see the Cyan team join, as well as the Seafoam Green country join. Japan joins, the Red team joins, the Polish team joins, the Irish team joins, but they weren't a founding member somehow, so that makes them a little bit sad. And that is all that joins for now, which leaves out all of South America, all of North America, almost all of Africa, and almost all of Oceania, actually all of Oceania, and a large portion of countries which you would think might want to join that, but like I said, France doesn't join, the Dark Cyan team, West Africa, they don't join, and it appears that this is already off to a rough start. Now, if you aren't in the OS, you get a black capital. Contrasting colors just works the best, and the yellow, oh my god, and the yellow is kind of hard to see specifically for this layer, so we're doing this instead. So the main reason that no one really wants to join this thing is because everyone is kind of skeptical about this. Like, is this just another one of those imperial things where you're gonna like kind of screw us over eventually? Well, we don't trust it. We don't know what your motives are with this, if it's some kind of globalist kind of organization, and a lot of the countries that are skeptical of it are some of the countries that we just saw fight in World War III, the dark green team, a lot of these Asian countries over here, and a lot of Africa we saw in that war, and Western Europe, the white team, and of course all of the American countries. So world unity isn't really on track so far, but who knows, maybe something will change. Also, we have to update this alliance map. That will be the last thing we do in this video. So obviously Russia does not exist anymore. That leaves these 3 together in an alliance. As for West Africa and the Dark Cyan team, they're out. The Iberian country, after receiving no help from Norway during World War III, they're out. The Circle Alliance is intact, but these 2 are a little bit mad about these 2 leaving. And as for the Square team, Norway and the White team stay in, and America is also allowed to stay in, and they decide to stay in. So no changes there for those 3, but they are the only countries that remain within that alliance because this guy is out. He left. Also for Texas, they obviously are going to leave the cross team because it doesn't make sense for them to be in an alliance with a bunch of Central Asian countries. What are they going to do for each other? Because these guys are landlocked. Yeah, they're out. And additionally, we also see Mexico out of the Circle Alliance. They think that China's too incompetent to lead that alliance now, so they leave, which leaves America almost completely neutral aside from, well, America. But the first thing that the ON is going to do is that they are going to start a rebuilding campaign for every single country that is in the alliance so they can recover from the nuclear fallout and the nuclear war, which has affected every single country here, especially the ones that have the white dot. They are kind of in like the blast zones. But that also means that countries over here with the black dots, like the green team, they don't get any help from this, which means that they have to rebuild on their own. Now, another point to make here is Russia's claim over the old empire's old capital city. What do we do with that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Instead of it being controlled by Russia, it is now relinquished over to Norway. That is disgusting. But Norway now takes over Russia's claim, and this capital city is still being divided up by the 4 major powers. Now, another thing that the ON is going to do here is that they're going to figure out the issue with nukes. Now, as we remember from World War III, yes, I do still have the map, nuclear bombs kind of went everywhere following the war, and the ON is making an effort to figure out where they all went. So, we now get an updated nuclear map on this map. So each country will be required to declare whether or not they have nuclear bombs, and even though the West African country is not in the UN, they will declare that they have 6 total nuclear bombs. These are the ones that they stole from the old empire, but now they are their very own. But the world will try to make an attempt to take them away, but that doesn't work too well. Now the brown team, they have a total of 7. They launched 10 of them into Russia, but they still have 7. We know that China has a grand total of 33, and they have taken back all 10 of the nukes that were in Mexico, which means they no longer have nukes stationed outside of their own territory. Speaking of Mexico, we know that they stole nukes from Texas, meaning that they have a total of 4. And we also know that America has nukes from the old empire, and they had all of the old empire's nukes at the end of the war. As you'll see, they had 11 total bombs, and all 11 of them were in the United States, meaning that along with the nukes that they stole from Texas, America now has 16 total nukes. And believe it or not, those are all the nukes in the world. 5 nuclear powers: America, Mexico, the brown team, the West African country, and China. Now the UN is going to make an effort here to take nukes away from countries which they believe shouldn't have them, including the West African country, the American country, and the Mexican country. Now who's going to give up their nukes? Oh, no, nobody's going to give up their nukes. Okay. Well, as it turns out, these guys, they're not in the UN, and therefore they don't want to cooperate with the UN, and they're not going to give up their nukes. So, yeah, what do we do about that? Well, the UN doesn't really have a right to form coalitions against any countries, so they can't do that. And it's not like they can afford a war right now either, because there's no money. So I guess we just let them have their nukes. Please don't give them to anyone else. Please. All right, and then the next step that the UN is going to do is that they're going to do an investigation of World War III, because what exactly happened to bring about all of that nonsense? Who assassinated the leader of the old empire? Who assassinated the leader of Russia? We need to figure this one out. So they are going to send some investigators down into the capital city of the old empire in hopes of uncovering some files that were maybe lost during World War III, and that's exactly what they do. All right, so they find files concerning Russia's attack on them and the subsequent response that the old empire had. We saw the files that explained why the old empire attacked China preemptively. We saw the ending files from the war when the old empire started to collapse. We saw the files around the assassination of the military leader of the old empire during World War III, and how the civilians came up and overrose him. But then in a bunker somewhere in the capital city, they find some files that are a little bit concerning. These files state that it was the old empire that assassinated the leader of Russia. They were responsible for Russia's leader's assassination. And remember, the assassination of the old empire's new leader happened right as Russia's leader got assassinated. That was messaging. That was a message being sent. He's here, you're gone. That was the old empire's message towards Russia, and that is ultimately what brought about the military tension between the two powers and subsequently World War III. But who shot the leader of the old empire? That is, nobody knows. There's no files there, which means that it wasn't an inside job or anything. The old empire didn't kill its own leader, which means that someone was responsible for it. So now they will go up to Russia and investigate their capital city and look for any files, and they don't find any. They find files concerning the old empire's faulty launch of nukes on Russia and their subsequent response. They find files on the assassination of their leader, on the collapse, everything like that. They find all of the events of the Cold War and World War III, but they don't find out anything about the assassination of the old empire's leader, which means that Russia didn't do it. All right, now we go to China. China cooperates, they show all the files, nothing's there. China didn't do it. It wasn't India, it wasn't Korea. There's some suspicion that it could be the West African country. There's some suspicion that it could have been the Purple country even, but they cooperate and it wasn't them. So who killed the old empire's leader? It wasn't the Irish country, it wasn't Norway. It wasn't any member that is in the UN, except we haven't actually interviewed the brown team yet. The brown team is very reluctant to release their files concerning the Cold War, and for a good reason. They're the ones that shot the old empire's leader. Yeah, that's crazy. So Norway and the purple team are going to be like, what? And immediately there is an argument that breaks out in the discussion room, and let's just say everyone leaves really angry. Specifically Norway and the purple team, they are the most angry because the brown team killed the old empire's leader and led to its collapse. That's a domino effect. The brown team is responsible for World War III. And when you start kind of putting together the pieces of the puzzle, you start to understand that the brown team might have been behind a lot more. Like, where did those nukes that were in Iberia go? Oh, they were bussed into the brown team. The brown team stole them. But how exactly did the brown team get a hold of them? Oh, France stole them and gave them to the brown. Okay, that's something. So this number is actually wrong. This is not 7. This is actually 13 because they stole 6 from the Iberian country, and now Now there's a lot of suspicion towards the brown team because what else have you been doing behind the scenes? Ever since World War II, you've been awfully quiet. You haven't done anything really. You invaded some weaker countries here and there, but like, what else have you done? The files keep getting undocumented and the leader of the brown team resigns. And then they find a really disturbing file that says that the brown team was the one that funded the terrorist organization in Mexico. Yeah, remember how that was a mystery for a long time? It was the brown team that did that. Ultimately, that worked in their favor because they were able to collapse the Texan country, which weakened the cross team in World War III. What else have they done? Well, it turns out they've been mingling in every single international politic that they can. Elections, they've been there. The African Civil War over here, they had a little bit to do with that, although that was a long time coming, but they definitely put a little bit of fuel in that fire. Not completely. I'm not saying they're responsible for it. It would have happened anyway, but the brown team maybe accelerated it a little bit. Are there any other big mysteries in the WICSO series? Because if there are, you might have to point your finger at the brown team. Mr. Revenge himself. Alright, so this development is not going to set well for the Organization of Nations. To be more specific, it doesn't set well with the Norwegian country and the Purple country. Both of them leave the organization, and it also kind of inspires some other countries to do so as well. Like the Finnish country, they leave. India, China, and Korea will try to uphold the thing for Asia, but there's just a loss of trust by almost everybody. And the brown team is, well, they're kind of mad about that, but the countries that just left, they're going to try to convince these other countries to get out while they can, and you might want to form some alliances because the brown team, I don't know what their motives are. We should probably form a coalition against them. And also the French team, what have they been doing? Why did they give the nukes to the brown team? Why didn't they just keep them for themselves? A lot of mysteries between these two countries, more so this country right here. This is the big baddie. This one might be his little underling. We'll see though. We'll see what happens. Also, big event. The purple team is moving their capital city from there all the way over to here where it was a very long time ago. This is a very symbolistic moment for the purple team. They have reclaimed the Italian peninsula for themselves and, well, they want a little bit more, but they're not going to go after Greece. They're not going to go after the dark purple team because if they would probably die. Don't want that to happen. All right, and one more thing for the ON. I promise this is the last thing I'm doing for them. They will attempt to put out a nuclear treaty to have all the nuclear powers in the world sign saying, hey, we're not going to use these things and we're only going to use them as deterrents. And also, in addition to that, we are only allowed to have a maximum of 30 nukes. If you build more than that, you're in trouble. We don't know how you're in trouble. We'll sanction you, I guess, but don't do that. China is like, But since they are one of the founding members and since they believe in the organization, they will listen and they will dismantle 3 of their nuclear bombs, leaving them with the maximum amount allowed, which is 30. Was anyone worried about this guy getting nuclear technology from the old empire when they invaded? Like, I would have been pretty nervous about that, but they didn't find anything there, so we're good, I guess, right? No nukes for the crazy guy, right? Speaking of crazy guys, time to get a little bit of an update on their ongoing endeavors. Alrighty, yep, there's less of that. All the red's gone there, and bad news, but all of the brown is gone from this country completely. They have effectively completed their genocide against the brown population within, and they're not going to stop though, because there's some red population up here, and even though it is the same religion, it's a different branch of that religion, and I don't like that. So genocide continue. By the way, a majority of this used to be brown. That's how bad the genocide is. They are doing it and they are winning. Religion and ethnicities in this series are kind of like on the same thing, I want to say. I used to call this the religion/ethnic layer. So I don't know if I ever officially called it that, but that's how I always envisioned it. So like, I guess there's that kind of like it's religion, but it's also not religion. It also kind of has the borders and boundaries of ethnicities. Purple's like Western European, and then you have all of their colonies are purple as well, which means they not only spread their religion, but also like themselves, like the colonizers. They were of purple descent, which means they were purple religion and purple ethnicity. All right, anyway, now moving on to some wars, because I know it's been a couple of episodes without a war. My bad. Also, World War III just got fought, so I mean, the world is in an economical turmoil right now. It's been about 3 years since World War III concluded, which means it's about 2003. That also means that I'm getting close to becoming a real-life person in this world. I would have been born in the American country. Let me know what country you're from in the comments below, now that it's a little bit more divided up. But with the economical turmoil happening and the resetting of the markets in Ireland, not many wars are realistically going to be fought. However, the more powerful countries, they do have the ability to do so, and none other than the brown team is going to make the first move. And who do they move against? Well, that is of course going to be the dark blue country down here, kind of where like Czechia is. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is in real life, because in this series it's gone. It's, yeah, all gone. Brown team won. This is the first war that has taken place in the last 3 years, and the world is looking at the brown team like, are you freaking insane? You just established the Organization of Nations, and you just invaded a country. Doesn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose? Well, not necessarily. The Organization of Nations is just to prevent another world war from happening, not necessarily some regional conflicts. But with this kind of event taking place, there's going to be a few more countries that are going to leave the organization, including the red country right here, and Estonia, and the orange country over here. They're out. Crimea is out. This purple country over here is out. And when you start losing countries that are this far away, it's a little bit concerning. And India, of all countries, is like, yeah, we might have not made this good enough. But we'll see. We'll see if they can fix it. Turns out, though, for this red country here, them leaving the ON was not a good idea because, yeah, probably should not have done that. This is like a former, like, Swedish claim, by the way, I believe. Sweden had like a little bit of land down here, and this is the descendant of that. It just got its independence again, but unfortunately for it, it's yep. All right. Sorry. So the brown team is very obviously violating any kind of peace agreement, peace promise that they may have made. And the ON is like kind of about to collapse. Not necessarily, but the Polish country is like, oh dang, we need to stay in this maybe so they don't invade us. Might be a good idea. There's a few other countries that are like kind of joining, like this purple country, they join, as well as this English country, they join the ON because they don't want to get invaded by the brown team. So it's sort of like now looking like a if you're not in my organization, you're kind of a target kind of thing. And even though France worked with the brown team a little bit in World War III, they're not a fool. So they're going to join the ON, and they're going to convince their dark purple companions to also join the ON. But now, are there any wars elsewhere? Yes, of course. Down to the Horn of Africa. The gold country is going to declare war on the orange country, saying that they need to be liberated. I think we all know what that really means. All right, yeah, gold team, we're not that dumb. We know what that means. But they will invade into the orange country. And remember, there was a little bit of some fiasco happening here. With the ethnicities, it caused a little bit of a fracture from a former country and the realignment of a few borders. Ultimately, though, the gold team doesn't seem to think that that is too important as they take the capital of the orange country and are able to capitulate it. However, not before we see the Tanzanian country gear up and go to war with the gold country, taking them on head on and saying that enough is enough. We will not allow you to continue to slaughter our own people, and it's time to throw hands. Now the ON sees this, and the ON is like, hey, these are two pretty strong countries, respectively in the region at least. They're fighting against each other. Surely this wouldn't lead to a world war, right? Maybe we should do something anyway, right? So the brown team and its friends in the ON, including India, are going to come down here, and they're going to be like, yo, stop fighting. Guys, stop fighting. Please stop fighting. Why are you fighting? Stop fighting. Guys, please. That's enough. All right, Tanzania, you win. Oh, no, okay, gold team, you're done. That's all. And, yeah, the ON is not working. On the realistic standpoint, though, the Tanzanian country is getting folded by the gold team. Yeah, don't mess with this guy. He's old. He's almost dead, probably, the leader that is the military guy. But he still has a conquest in mind. And his son? Oh, wait till you meet his son. The successor to him once he croaks. Even better military mind. That's a little bit scary. So Tanzania is going to be like, yo, India, can you help us out here? And India, not wanting to even think about starting another world war that could go nuclear because, you know, it only took one country to do a little bit of a sneaky assassination to start the nuclear war that killed millions. India's like, hell no. And Tanzania is going to call upon other friends in Africa, like the Madagascar country and this pink country, and like, yo, can you please help us out against the gold team? We're getting whipped. Please help us out against the gold team. We're getting beat pretty bad. Nobody wants to help because nobody wants to go to war because no one can afford to go to war. And the gold team is making astonishing progress into the Tanzanian country until eventually they stop and they offer peace to the Tanzanians. Turns out the gold team ran out of money. Yeah, I told you everyone is broke. They don't get to bypass the broken economy. They're broke. The gold team can't go on anymore, and they're offering peace to the Tanzanian team as long as they give them a little bit of land. The Tanzanian country is terrified of this, so what they're going to do is they're going to evacuate as many people out of this area as possible in hopes of allowing them to survive, because we all know what the gold team's going to do here. We all know what they're going to do. So over here, they will completely annex this country, and down over here, we will go to the province map, and they will be getting all of this land. Not a whole lot, but enough for their spoils for more, and Tanzania will be allowed to live, although they're kind of cut off circulation-wise around this whole Lake Victoria. Not that big of a deal though. There are bigger issues, and of course those issues are like well, you can see what those issues are. Not good. Anyway, we now head on over to Central Africa, where we see a unionization take place between the blue and the pink countries. Now, of course, something to remember here, the blue country is a part of the Triangle Alliance, which means that this union will have to join that alliance as well. The pink team isn't opposed to it because right now, economical alliances are probably a little bit useful. Maybe not fully useful, but probably a little bit. Like, at least you can work through the problems together, I guess, or trade is cheaper. I'm not sure. But these two will be unionizing into one, placing their new capital city relatively close to what would be the center of the two countries. And together, their unionized country looks like this. So, like I said, still members of the Triangle Economical Alliance. And we might even see some more unionization take place as the world heads into probably the climax of the economical disparity. Like, it's at its very worst right now, but from here, it's only going to get better. More specifically though, in Arabia and in Russia, a lot of these guys are struggling immensely. And there isn't really one like solid economical alliance that would fix the economies of every single country. There are of course a lot of regional ones. Like in West Africa, you have the Star Alliance. South Africa, this Triangle one. In North America, you have the Trapezoid. India has its own little beneficial alliance. But nobody really wants to join any kind of alliances right now because they are scarred from World War III. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Even the countries that were just released, like, they don't trust each other, even though they were a part of the same country, which was the old empire. They don't trust each other. So yeah, it's like kind of just sucky right now. Not a whole lot to do. Oh, and by the way, in Central Asia, you know how I said Russia was keeping these three together? Yeah, that's true. The pink team leaves after a disagreement, and then the brown team leaves after a disagreement, leaving only the green team, who, of course, you can't have an alliance with yourself unless you're a loser. So there goes the cross team. No longer a thing anymore. So I guess by that logic, you could say the cross team was the one that lost World War III, sort of. Yeah, I'm not too sure. But what the hatred brewing over here, it leads to annexation. Yeah, it would be very hard for you to believe that these two fought on the same side in World War III under the same alliance. But okay, there that goes. And maybe like you could agree with the green team. You know, they said they invaded the brown team because they were about to collapse. Their economy was ruined. And that was sort of true. But they also didn't really have consent to do that. So in a way, they got the head start in taking the land before anyone else got it. But at the same time, they were armed going in there. So like, I guess your point of view, whatever you want it to be. You know this gray country right here? Yeah, it's kind of in the way. So what do you do when there's a country in your way and you're way stronger than they are and they could never even hope to have a defense against you? Well, you're going to steamroll them, of course. Goodbye, gray country. And the world is kind of confused about this because if you take a look at the religion map, you'll see that the gray country is a majority pink team religion, which is the same religion as the gold team. But then you remember that the gold team is actually just a fascist nation, and they have even installed their own fascist regime in Libya, which means that there are two fascist countries right here. I guess actually a better terminology would be National Socialists. They are the NAZI countries. Can't say that on YouTube, I don't believe, at least for this subject. But just for simplicity, I'm going to call them fascists anyway. Even though they technically are National Socialists. But the gold team will completely annex all of the gray team. And going over to this map here, we can see the borders of the gold team outlined over all the areas that they currently occupy. And yep, it's still happening, and nobody's doing anything about it. Oh, yeah, it's also still happening to these guys, even though they're the same religion. Yeah, okay, sure, that's cool. I mean, it's not cool, but whatever. All right. Anyway, there's been some stuff brewing in Europe. The brown team is they're kind of suspicious. They have a lot of military brewing up right now, and the world is like looking at them like, what are we doing? What is the brown team doing right now? They just got a new leader, and he's also very suspicious, just like the last one. He's not really talking to anybody, and he's got a whole bunch of troops all around his country. They're all moving, and it's like, what are we doing here? World War III just concluded. We can't have a World War IV right now. I don't even know if a World War IV would be possible with the current state of the world. So like, calm down and maybe don't do what you're doing. And then they put troops on the border of the purple team. And then it's like, alrighty, yeah, no, we're not doing that. The purple team will join the square team alliance out of fear of the brown team trying to jump them. The brown team would absolutely obliterate the purple team. mostly because the brown team was kind of unaffected by World War III, whereas the purple team saw direct fighting. So it's kind of like a precautionary thing. They're going to band together with Norway and the white team and the Americans. All four of those countries, of course, were affected by World War III. So hopefully them banding together would be enough to stop the brown team from a possible invasion. But now it's getting to the point where even the French are a little bit suspicious. They see brown team troops kind of moving around this area, and the French will kind of put their troops on their border right here. Now, they did have a defensive alliance with the brown team. That expired. And basically, the brown team is like putting themselves in a position to where they could get a coalition formed against them based off of pure suspicion. And to be honest with you, I called it the age of aggression. So take that as you will. Anyway, the ON is basically out the window at this point. Yeah, nobody trusts the brown team at all. India and China are kind of talking to each other like, should we just like do our own thing and leave him alone? And it's gaining momentum, so that might actually happen. And the ON is the League of Nations in this timeline. It's not going to work out. But alas, they will try to keep it together, and the brown team just keeps making it weirder and weirder. But now we move over towards the Turkish peninsula, where we have a war taking place. This time, the magenta country is invading somebody. And this is kind of weird because you just got your independence, and so did everyone else around here, so why are we fighting each other? Well, as it turns out, the magenta country thinks that they have claims over this country here. Turns out they kind of do. They also kind of don't. It's hard to explain, but ancestry has something to do with it, like a common people amongst these guys, and thus they believe that they should rule over all of the area. Where have we seen this before? But basically, that's their justification for it. And this yellow team country right here, they don't have any troops. They're too busy trying to set up an economy in the first place. They don't have any money to spend on military personnel. So when the magenta people come in, they just kind of win. And of course, the magenta country was able to do this because they have been an established nation before, whereas this is like a completely new thing. These guys were just like a department of the old empire, and they were given independence. So that's why they're able to function a little bit better. And I guess I didn't really talk about that when I did the entire peace treaty, but these are not like sections and departments of the old empire. These are literally like divvied up versions. There is no like big cluster. There's no region that got independence. Like, this wasn't a state in the old empire. This is like an amalgamation of a bunch of different provinces under one new state. And the reason they did that is because they're really trying to not let something like the old empire or the red team ever form again. And their strategy is pretty efficient, I would say. Good luck trying to do that, even with your core province territory being dropped up like this. Like, this is ridiculous. But the magenta team is going to take out this yellow country here, and in this peace treaty we see that they get fully annexed. Now, something to notice here is that they both of these nations here were in the ON. Obviously, one of them doesn't exist anymore. So what does the ON even do? Because they didn't stop two of their own members from fighting each other. In a lot of countries, seeing that the brown team had nothing to say, and neither did India or China, they're just going to leave this thing. And it just so happens that a majority of these countries that leave are on the border of the magenta country. We see the blue team, the green team, the orange team, the dark blue team, and the red team, as well as the gray team, all leave the Organization of Nations. Ouch! That hurts your ambitions, brown team, if you have any. You guys want some trade routes? Yeah, they're still here somehow. This is irrelevant to the series. This has nothing to do anymore, but I thought it's interesting that I still have that. Oh yeah, also military bases. That doesn't matter either because they're all destroyed. Anyway, we're not going to shift our focus over to South America, where we have the dark blue Brazilian country going through a little bit of a leadership change. Turns out being the leader of the strongest country in South America comes with a lot of responsibilities. Like, for example, not allowing for your economy to completely crash, and also crashing the economy of the entire continent even worse, because they all kind of depend on you in some kind of way through a trade market. But you just let inflation take your country over, and now $1 is worth $1 billion, and you're out of office. It gets a little radical over here. It gets a little too crazy, and one thing leads to another, and Brazil elects a fascist to their leadership. All right, we now have 3 fascist nations in the world: the Brazilian country, the Libyan country, and the dark gold country. Very fun. Oh yeah, also like the purple countries, that's 4 fascist nations, and suspiciously enough, 3 of them are banding together in one alliance. So what's the move, Brazil? Fix the economy? Sure. Fix inflation? I guess that could work as well, but why not invade another country? I mean, we don't have any money or anything like that, but we can just tell the troops that they can loot the villages that they invade, which also just so happens to be kind of a form of genocide. Am I remembering that rightly? He's looting. I think that's a war crime, obviously. I don't think it's genocide, although if you displace people from their home place, that is genocide. It doesn't matter though, because the Orange Country just got obliterated by Brazil. And that was that. Yeah, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. That's Brazil, my friend. But now we head up north here to North America, where we finally see that the Alaskan country joins in on the North American trade organization. I guess I'll call that NATO. But the North American Trade Organization is, as you see, oh no, a bunch of North American states all combined in one economical alliance. This is a currency alliance, which means that you have to switch currencies to be in it. Alaska has been in the process of switching currency for a very long time, and luckily enough, the currency that the North American alliance uses is one of the most stable in the world right now, because they are the only alliance, or I guess economical alliance, that didn't really get involved in a conflict over here in World War III. They're also really far away from it, so they didn't really feel the gist of it as much as anyone else. Also, another country joins this alliance. It is the Greenland country. They joined NATO. But now we're going to focus in on American politics a little bit, because this place is a little bit more interesting now that the great powers have left their influence. First of all, America does still have their connections to Norway and all of Europe, which makes them probably the biggest threat to anybody in this continent, including South America. But what is happening with Texas? Oh, okay. So Texas just collapsed. All right, that's fine. I didn't really think they would survive anyway, but it's official. So 3 nations now remain out of the remnants of Texas. We have basically just Los Angeles, we have Arizona, and then we have Texas, but not Texas. Texas, but not. Yeah, I'm sure these 3 won't get gobbled up very quickly in the near future. I'm also sure that tensions between Mexico and the terrorist group are totally not very high right now, especially considering they don't have a common enemy anymore, and especially considering that there aren't like 4 exclaves within the Red Team's territory, and I'm sure that they don't want those exclaves back, and I'm sure that they're not willing to use all measures and means to kick these terrorists out of territorial Mexico. America's like, please don't, and if you do, guess what? I have 4 times as many as you do, and I will use all my nukes to ensure that you don't ever use nukes again. America is deterring Mexico from using their nukes. That's how deterrence works. Mexico isn't going to do it because they know America will respond, and America won't have to respond because they know Mexico isn't ballsy enough to do it. Also, have you ever wondered what the Bermuda Triangle looks like? Well, there you go. Actually, not really. All right, that's a little bit better. We got Bermuda, we got Miami, and we got Puerto Rico. Bang. I've been within this before. Nothing bad happened. Anyway, we now head over to Southeast Asia / Oceania. This place has been doing absolutely nothing for the longest of times, and that actually changes today. Because a certain yellow country cannot handle the economical collapse of the world and needs someone to unite with, and they get to choose between Sumatra or Borneo, and they will end up choosing Borneo, meaning that they unite together. More so, they unite under Borneo, which helps out both countries. It helps out this island, and it helps out Borneo overall, but the purple team is a little bit salty about that because, hey, they should have united with us. They're closer. Will we see our first war in Indonesia? No, we won't. So there's a little bit of beef and tension that still exists between China, Korea, and Vietnam. We remember World War III, of course, that just happened, and we remember the coalition that formed against China and ultimately led to its collapse of government and thus a loss of land. Well, as it turns out, their aggressions and hostilities towards each other haven't gone away. Sure, Korea joined in on the ON, or not. Turns out they're out because China's in, and also because these guys are being weird and we don't like those guys anymore, so we're done. That's completely understandable. Japan, on the other hand, they're willing to give it a chance still. But my main point from this is that there's still a lot of untrustfulness that are happening between Korea, China, and Vietnam. And from this untrustfulness comes the formation of a new alliance, this time between Vietnam and Korea. They did form a coalition during World War III, however, that was not an official alliance. This, however, is an official alliance, meaning that these two, if they were ever to go to war with China, the other one would have their back. Now, what is a country that, like this light blue country that's been here forever, how do they feel about this growing hostilities around them? Are you like looking at India like, hey, can you protect me? Are you trying to join one of these guys? Or are you trying to get revenge? We'll never know. Anyway, the green team is still on its revenge arc, apparently. They didn't get the memo that the war has ended, and they still want some land that the old empire took from them, even though the old empire, the red team, it doesn't exist anymore. But they don't seem to care. So the green team had a little bit of claims in this blue country right here. They also had a lot of claims in this brown country right here. They do not care that the world is dying economically. They do not care that there are better things to do right now than invade weak countries that just got created. They simply do not care. They're menaces. The main strategy here, though, is to get a common amount of alliances, which will shape the outline of what they hope to be their future border. And, well, to put it frankly, the blue team doesn't have much of a military at all at this point, and they're able to do that with a relative amount of ease. And now they'll just kind of go right down here and they'll be like, hey, I got these papers. They will relinquish over all of these provinces to us. Just sign this paper and we'll be on our way. All right, make sure to read the fine print, but the blue team ends up signing the deal, which is the peace deal. And in their peace treaty, they fully annex all the provinces which they outlined in the deal that they give to the blue team. And this kind of sucks for the blue team, but to be honest with you, that's not like too much valuable of land. Like, all of their important assets are around the coastal areas. Losing about a fifth of your country up north, whatever. I mean, they could have tried to buy it off of us, I guess. Like, that would have been a better approach. Wouldn't you agree? But with the green team's advances now heading towards like the Middle Eastern area, they kind of feel like they need to move their capital city back to kind of closer to where their roots lie. And that's exactly what they do, moving their capital city to this major city, which is an interesting move because the territory that you're moving into isn't necessarily assimilated fully yet. So like, it's whatever, it's your territory now, but you're gonna get a lot of hostilities outside of your government workplaces and a lot of protest, if you allow protest, who knows, which could prove to be a little bit of an issue. Speaking of proving to be an issue, these guys want to continue to expand now going into the gold country, and they will send an ultimatum over to them saying basically, if you don't give us the promises that we desire, we're gonna cut your head off. All right, that's kind of brutal, so the gold team will go ahead and accept that. And in their ultimatum, these are the promises that they demand from the gold team. Ignore this thing, I messed up. However, you do notice that this would look extremely weird if they just fully annex this. Like, that's a weird looking country. So here's what we're actually gonna do. We're gonna spit out these little provinces over here, going all the way up, and we're gonna give them over to our puppet state so they can get a little bit more land and look a little bit better. And also so we don't look horrendous on the map and in the thumbnails. Anyway though, this is our updated map of the Persian region. The green team, without an old empire or a red team to boss them around and prevent them from doing any expansion, is able to do whatever they want, and in this case, whatever they want is relinquishing land from ancient times. Yes, the history books do show that the green team presided over this region when the world first began, and that's cool and all, but that was thousands of years ago. So why are we conquesting against new countries that haven't done anything wrong? Well, the green team simply does not care, and these characteristics that they are showing, aggressive expansion, brutality, kind of like a no free speech kind of thing, it kind of reminds me of an ideology somewhere else in the world. I just can't put my finger on it though. It's almost like the subsequent ending of World War III and the consequences it brings upon the world have led to an increase in radicalization of the population, and thus the population is more willing to elect leaders that are saying some crazy things and are more willing to do some crazy things because they too have been radicalized and they too are extremely nationalistic now. Got it? We got some stuff to go over in this video, like the brown team invading the British Isles. In a move that the world saw coming, well, it was pretty public that the brown team has been up to some shenanigans that ultimately are going to lead to its expansion. But these guys are going to invade the purple English country, the green Cornwall country, and then move troops all the way up into this tannish yellow country and take over all of England for themselves, leaving just themselves, Ireland, and the Scottish country in the British Isles. Here is your daily British update. Now, of course, the brown team, people have already kind of given up on the OS. As you can see, they have lost members over time. They most recently lost Korea, and with this invasion happening, a few things are going to happen. Number one, the Norwegians are going to send a letter to the brown team saying, hey, you should probably stop doing that, because if you keep doing that, we're going to get a bunch of people to jump you, so stop. And the second thing to happen is the complete collapse of the Organization of States. With the brown team's invasion of the British Isles, we see both India, China, and a series of other European countries leave the Organization of States, which officially dissolves the organization. And yeah, that's that. The Organization of States very short-lived, and it no longer exists. Basically, this world's version of the League of Nations. And it is at this very moment that the world experiences a large shift. Nationalism begins to rise, and it begins to skyrocket to an unprecedented level. Countries are no longer very accepting of other countries. Very similar to the right-wing movements we're seeing in both America and Europe right now, but on crack, and a lot more dangerous, violent too. And all of a sudden, the world starts to look at democracy, at liberalism, at Western kind of ideology, which this world doesn't have, but its own version of it, as kind of a failing ideology that can't support their countries. People are radical. We saw this first in the gold country in Africa. We're now seeing it in the green country in Central Asia, and we've seen it in the brown country before, but now it is back in the brown country as they go expansionist and show aggression toward the rest of Europe. The age of aggression is now in its rising point. Borders close, relations are cut, and new ideologies begin to be established, but a lot of them are very similar to the ideology that we're seeing in the Horn of Africa. We're seeing the rise of fascism and National Socialism. For example, the red Australian/New Zealand country, they elect a fascist leader. In the brown team, elections are happening very soon, and there are two candidates. One, well, we've heard this before, but there are two candidates. One who is a fascist and very anti-European values of Westernish kind of democratic liberalish ideology, and pro-fascism, our state's better than your state, so let's get rid of your state. That's kind of what he is. The other guy is just your traditional old brown team politician. Safe to say that with the rise of nationalism in the world and the growing hatred for other countries, the fascist guy is going to win his election, and the brown team becomes a fascist nation. Immediately, in the brown team and in other fascist institutions around the world, such as Brazil, Australia, Libya, and other fascist nations that I've named so far, we see the complete dissolvement of constitutions and the complete implementation of fascist regimes with only one ruler, a dictator. The brown team now has a dictator, one of the only ones in Europe. We already know that the gold team has a dictator. We got to talk about him in a second. Libya has a dictator. The purple country has a dictator. Brazil now has a dictator. And so does Australia. This growing movement is very clearly dangerous. But it's not just fascism that is rising. As we know, the brown team is very unliked in Europe. There are very many countries like Norway and the purple team who do not support their campaign of invading their weaker neighbors, and with the rise of fascism, there needs to be a counter to such an ideology, and thus we see the rise of communism/socialism. Now, I don't want to say that it's the same communism as socialism that happened in real life. Specifically in the USSR, that was Marxist-Leninism, kind of weird. Not exactly how Marx described communism. They didn't do it right. So the communism that you see here isn't necessarily the same as you saw in the USSR. Maybe it's a version of communism that actually works, although that's not very possible, but you can kind of just theorize with it. Basically what we're getting here is these are left-wing ideologies, and the brown team and other fascist nations are right-wing ideologies. The purple team, and that's why I was kind of looking at it, elects a communist/socialist leader who also plunges the country into a dictatorial power. They throw out their democratic values and go down a path of regime. Soon to follow is the Farmers Union. They elect their own communist leader, but something to note about the Farmers Union is that they are kind of the founders of communism, whereas the Horn of Africa country down here, they are kind of the founders of fascism. We see the founding of communism in the Farmers Union. Ironically enough, I mean, just look at the name Farmers Union, peasants union, bourgeoisie, proletariat. You can just kind of look at the history of the white country / the Farmers Union, and you can see that yeah, these guys are always kind of left wing in a very anti-upper class country. But we now have two communist nations thus far, these two down here, and Norway is experimenting with a form of socialism which they might be implementing soon. Who knows? We'll see. We're gonna go ahead and look somewhere else now, and that's back down here to the Horn of Africa, because their military leader, the great military leader who fought off the old empire and even invaded into the peninsula, has passed away. His son comes into power, and his son is an even greater military mind, and he's also way more evil. On the very day that this guy is put into power, he declares war on the dark blue country, and this thing is absolutely steamrolled in a matter of days. It had absolutely no chance to withstand the Gold Team's army, and this country is very, very quickly becoming a regional power. Now, something we need to talk about with regional powers. There is no longer an old empire to keep these guys in check. The old empire prevented the Green Team from doing this. They prevented the Brown Team, to an extent, from doing what they're doing now. They prevented the Gold Team from doing what they're doing now, and we've seen other regional powers like India try to mitigate this and stop, but they simply are not the old empire. They don't have the power to do this. In other words, the old empire was in a way keeping the world in order, but without it, not so much. And now the question can be asked, was the old empire necessary for world peace, despite, killing millions? That's a question that I'll let you guys debate amongst yourselves. And another thing I really do want to mention this real quick too. Sorry, we'll get to a war here in a second, a very big one. But so the Green Team here obviously has been here since episode 1. Is it the same Green Team as episode 1? In my opinion, no. But if you guys want these ancient powers to still be prevalent in the modern day, which in this year is probably like 2006, 2007. If you guys want this to be the ancient Green Team country, you can. Once again, this is your guys' series. Your guys' ideas are the ones that drive this. You guys give me ideas and I implement them. So really, I only kind of provide the lore. You guys provide everything else, the filler. So if you want this to be the ancient Green Team country, go right ahead. If you want this to be the same Greek country that was invaded by the old empire at one point, go ahead. If you want this to be the purple country from episode 1, you have the right to feel that way. I'm not going to tell you what is and what isn't for these countries, but I will just simply provide the lore and what you're seeing on the screen. So I did just want to clear that up real quick. Anyway, back to the video, because we have a major development happening in West Africa. Something big is about to happen. The West African country is also going through elections. Now, these guys are a flawed democracy. They've had the same leader since World War III. And we know World War III ended in 2000. It was a 10-year war starting in 1990. So yeah, it ended in 2000. It's currently 2006. They have elections every 4 years, and the same guy has been there since then. So obviously this guy has been skipping elections since the 90s. But he is at a point now where he is too old to run the country, and he steps down from power and finally decides to follow his country's constitution and allow for elections. And what would you know? The nationalism in this country is just as high as everyone else's. In fact, it's probably worse than everyone else's. We have 3 candidates on the block. We have one guy who is, he's kind of like I don't want to say he's a centrist, but he's like kind of in between on communism and fascism. He's like a middle ground guy. He's like, I understand this about that and that about this, but how about we just kind of do a little bit of both? That's impossible, but just pretend. And then you have your 2 other leaders. These guys are the radical leaders. You have the communist and you have the fascist. Knowing the history and the past of the West African country, we can assume who's going to win. And yes, it's the fascist. He comes into power, immediately burns the constitution at the inauguration, and declares himself the eternal ruler of the West African country. People have some mixed reactions about this declaration, but what he does next is well, the very definition of the age of aggression. He declares that his country deserves better. He declares that this country has been wronged by a familiar face. This country, despite winning a war of independence against its former self, is not done just yet. The Declaration of Independence was just the first part. This leader wants to reclaim all of the African Union under one union, which is his union. West Africa declares war on the Mediterranean country. And it's not just West Africa. Libya is involved as well. And with no old empire coming to save the Mediterranean country, it's not going to look good for these guys. In his inaugural speech, I don't know if I want to call it an inaugural speech because he's a dictator, but in his rise to power and his, placement in the office, he declares war upon the Mediterranean country, and to this, the people cheer. Once again, nationalism and hate for other countries at an all-time high, which is making people make these decisions to elect these kind of people, and they are in support of these crazy ideas, which are just unprecedented. In other words, the age of democracy is dead. The age of diplomacy is dead. The world is reverting. West African troops immediately storm in to the Mediterranean country and meet an army that is completely demoralized. The Mediterranean country is seen as kind of like the last beacon of hope for democracy in Africa and in the Mediterranean world. With the rise of communism in Italy, and of course the rise of fascism and the brown team. It's only a matter of time until these other countries follow suit in ideological shifts. The Mediterranean country, though, was very proud of its democratic values. And notice how I said was, because they are fighting a losing war. Libya, with help from the gold country, has revolutionized its military into one that isn't just a laughing matter. Remember, Libya has been thrown around a lot in history, especially by some powers in Mesopotamia, but those powers are long gone. So with the help of his friend over in the Horn, Libya is doing great damage to the Mediterranean country. Very quickly, the West Africans go after the major city down here in the middle of the African Union, taking it and pretty much severing a lot of infrastructure connecting the north of the Mediterranean country to the south down here in the desert. We also see the West Africans expand out from this major city, going right over towards Libya, who eventually does the same and connects up with them, disconnecting the country into two pieces. And from here, a campaign is made to connect up in the middle, and this goes extremely well. Down south, well, there's no armies down here. And with the help of their ally in the purple country, Libya makes excursions from their borders, kind of similar to what Russia has done from Belarus in real life. And this area is gone within a few days. It's not well protected at all. Up north, though, it's a little bit of a different story. The Mediterranean country isn't just going to be pushed over. They managed to push back over here in the west and take two major cities, but in the south, they do continue to struggle against a red Libyan team, who is now getting volunteer troops from the gold country all the way over in the Horn of Africa, and this is very sad. This is a sad day. Next thing you know, the purple team is invading Sardinia. These guys just love to take over land that's going to be lost anyway. And the Mediterranean country, in one last-ditch effort to take back its major cities and rally its people, will make a sweeping campaign against the Libyans, costing them hundreds of thousands of troops. On both fronts, they do manage to take back this major city as well, although it's not going to be of much use since once again they've lost all of their southern area. But unfortunately for the Mediterranean country, that's pretty much all they had. There's no gas left in the tank, and the West Africans start sweeping through. Eventually, the Mediterraneans completely abandon their southern half of remaining land and fall back to the four major cities that they have within their country. From here, it's a series of small battles with lots of casualties, but at the end of the day, they're unable to stop the advancing armies. The Libyans encircle a major city in the south, and the West Africans capture one in the north, and eventually, the Mediterranean country surrenders. One of the oldest democracies in Africa is gone. The country that both pushed for and helped with the decolonization of Africa is gone. Africa has just lost probably its greatest country in the series thus far in terms of what it has done for the continent. In I guess decolonization would be the only thing they've really done, but that's a huge thing. But it's gone. And now it's time for the peace treaty, which will divide this thing into two pieces. And in this peace treaty here, we can see exactly how it is divided. I do want to point out, though, that there was a new province created. It's this one right here. This was made just so the borders don't look horrendous. But otherwise, we have the peace treaty going something like this, with the Libyan country getting all of this very valuable land up here. This will help their economy tremendously, taking over some very valuable and already economically developed land from the Mediterranean country. And then we have the West Africans taking over everything else, taking the capital of the Mediterranean country, which is seen as a great accomplishment for this new leader. But down here, we also see the creation of a new country, which is going to be the pink team. Now, these guys are kind of just like a buffer state in a way. They don't even have any major cities, I don't think. No. So let's go ahead and just build them one right here, which will also be their capital. But now Northern Africa looks something like this. But we're not done just yet, because guess who is joining the Parallelogram Alliance? It is going to be none other than the West African country, which is now the only remaining remnant of the African Union. And I forgot Sardinia again. That goes over to the purple team. But this is what our new map of Africa is looking like. And this is the new major power alliance in it. A good name for these guys would be the Axis, I guess, since, you know, in real life, the Axis was Fascist and National Socialist. Not really interchangeable, but very similar, but also not very similar. It's weird. Italy had fascism, Germany had National Socialism, but they kind of just worked together in a way. So I don't know. I'll let you guys debate. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The fascist front, the Axis, like I said. But that's not all. The West African country wants to help out their new allies in a way, so they will allow them entry into their economical alliance. Remember, this is a currency alliance. So these guys will be getting a new currency, one that is a lot stronger than their current currencies, and this will help them rebuild after the great collapse that we saw from World War III. But now we have one final event taking place in this video, and it happens over here in Poland. Poland is terrified. Poland just became a country again. I guess this is actually more so Poland, Lithuania, but still, I'm just gonna call it Poland. But these guys, very similar to real life Poland. They haven't been free a whole bunch of times. They're, a historical country, got swallowed up by surrounding powers, more so the brown team in Russia, but actually no, that happened in real life too. But then they got their independence at a certain point, got swallowed up again, but now they're back. And they really don't want to disappear again because no country wants to disappear. And they're terrified of the brown team because if you look at who the brown team borders, they border Italy. You can't go to war with Italy because you would be going to war with the whole square team alliance, and that would be very counterproductive. I'll say that, counterproductive. You can go after France, but France is kind of friendly with you. They're kind of like your lapdog. You don't want to invade your lapdog. You can go after Ireland, but that would probably be the breaking point for a coalition to form because Ireland has just been chilling. They don't even do anything anymore. They're just chilling. Yeah, they haven't had a war in ages. So don't invade them. That's probably not a good idea. And obviously don't invade Norway. You can go after the Farmers Union, but obviously don't invade them either because, hey, you can see the square team alliance on the screen. So that leaves just Poland. And I don't think Poland is in favor of that. So they're going to do the smart move. And Poland will enter the alliance of the square team. Meaning that now the brown team is completely surrounded on all sides by the square team other than here. But ignore that. They are kind of feeling like how Russia says they feel in real life right now with NATO. They're like, hey, you're expanding around my borders. Are you going to jump me? Man, maybe I should go invade an independent sovereign nation so they don't join that alliance. And then I'm going to have the USA back me because I don't know. You see the real life analogy there? Anyway, but in all seriousness and in this series, Poland joins the square team out of fear that the brown team will invade them, and the brown team's reaction to this isn't too nice. They're basically saying, hey, are you guys gonna gang up on me? But the square team will come out and say that their alliance is completely defensive. They have no offensive mechanisms within their alliance. Basically, it's an attack one, attack all alliance, very similar to NATO in real life. But the broader issue that we're seeing in North Africa is the rise of fascism. You can see that the parallelogram alliance now has 4 members within it, and these guys are all very expansionist, which is what we're going to be seeing first in this video. First of all, though, the West Africa country will go ahead and go down to their own ally, which is the orange country, and they will get them to join the parallelogram alliance, meaning that they also now have a fascist leader. And over the course of a few months, maybe years, the West African country will go ahead and try to force its ideology on members of its economical alliance, such as these 3 nations right here, in order to get them to just join the alliance as opposed to having to overthrow their regimes. Now, as we know in Africa, there are 2 major economical alliances, being the Star Economical Alliance and the Triangle Economical Alliance. These are both currency-based alliances, meaning that you have to use the same currency as all of these countries, kind of similar to our modern-day European Union. And I do want to say, there will be power rankings in this episode. Finally, after we do a few things, we will be doing power rankings towards the middle of the video, so do stick around for that because I keep forgetting to do them, but we're finally going to do them. But where I was going with this other economical alliance is that it is growing in numbers, specifically in Southern Africa. We see a few countries join it, such as Tanzania. We also see both the pink and the beige country join, and we see the red country join up here. So these guys all come together under an economical banner. Now, this isn't a military alliance, so there's no security guarantees anywhere, but being in a common economical alliance could help them improve their relations to maybe eventually one day form a military alliance, one that can counter the growing parallelogram alliance up north. But now we're shifting our focus up north to Europe, where we have an unfortunate event happening for a certain country. Oh, Poland. So Poland just got its independence a few episodes back when Russia collapsed. And, well, they're having a nice little civil war. Now, they also just joined the Square Alliance, so we'll have to see how that affects the civil war. But for now, within Poland, we have pro-Russian rebels trying to break away and join up with this Lime Team country, which is one of the former Russian countries. And this thing has some pretty big momentum. It's pretty strong. And officially, it is these few provinces which are trying to break away. So now let's let the civil war commence. In the first couple of days, the rebels take some ground into other provinces. These provinces are not pro-Russian in nature, however, they do have a large population which is in support of Russia, which helps them move in to Polish territory, specifically down here in the south. Now wait, because there's more. On top of the pro-Russian rebels, we also see pro-Dutch rebels. These guys are, as you can tell, right next to the borders of the Dutch country and include this set of provinces. Much similar to the Russians, they will see early success in this Polish Civil War, going right towards the center of the country in hopes of cutting off access to some major cities down in the south, some of which they've already captured. Now there really isn't any kind of mutual working together that is happening between these two rebel groups, they just kind of happen at the same time, but it does kind of ask the question of, are these funded rebels by a power? Maybe the Brown Team. I would suspect that it's maybe them. But we will have to see. Eventually the rebels do cut across center Poland and meet up, disconnecting northern and southern Poland, which allows for a set of sweeping campaigns by both rebel groups, ultimately leading to just a few pockets of soldiers fighting in the south. Up north, though, is a little bit of a different story. The Poles are fighting back. They beat back the Russian rebels all the way to their border and do some serious damage against the Brown Team's rebels. All in all, though, they aren't very successful in penetrating into the southern region of their country, but luckily for Poland, they recently just got themselves a new set of allies in the Square Team, so they will have the help of the Norwegians, the Purple Team, and the Farmers Union in this civil war. And to be honest with you, this is like one of the strongest alliances in the world. So when these troops enter into the country, it's not so pretty for the rebellious groups. Specifically, the Farmers Union does a lot of the heavy lifting in the south, beating back all of these rebel groups and making an effort to reconnect Poland with its northern self. Meanwhile, over here up north, the Norwegians arrive in order to push back the Brown Team's rebels. And this goes extremely well as they're able to recapture a major city. And once the Purple Team's troops arrive, it's pretty much wrapped for all of these rebel groups. They'll be pushed back and kind of consolidated into their own individual pockets. And eventually the main force of the rebellion groups will be invaded by Poland. Eventually the Russian group is wiped out, and soon after, so is their army. Now all that remains is the remnants of the Dutch team's rebellion, and like the Russians, these guys are completely pushed out. So the civil war is over. Poland won its own civil war, didn't lose any land. A large part of that can be thanks to their allies, but it has definitely left Poland a little bit unstable. And unfortunately for Poland, they are also having elections around this time. And like in much of the other countries around the world, ideologies are becoming very contrasting. People are very nationalistic and radical, meaning that the candidates in this cycle are no different than the candidates seen in a lot of other countries. Very radical, very fascist, and also very communist. Now, Poland is kind of a centerpiece in Europe. Now, they're not necessarily an important player in the series at all. They barely exist in the series, but they are kind of in an important spot, separating Western Europe and Central Europe from the Great Eastern Front, which I know a few countries would like to expand into. So when there is a fascist and a communist going up against each other in an election, you're probably going to want to support the person that has the same ideology as you. And as we know, both the Farmers Union and the Purple Team are communist nations, and the Brown Team is a fascist nation. So what do we get when Poland is at play with their election here? Well, we get a great amount of foreign interference. These elections are rigged very badly. Now, the current Polish government is fairly centrist, slightly center-right, but they are still willing to work with these communist nations in order to save their country, you know? They would rather be protected by these three than getting invaded by the Brown Team. So the government doesn't necessarily care who wins this election, but they really should. But Poland's allies do. They don't want Poland to go fascist because then they might leave their alliance and partner up with the Brown Team, which could serve as a huge issue for them later on. So they start rigging their election, and of course, as we know, the Brown Team is probably already doing that as well. And the results are extremely close on election night. But ultimately, we see this. The fascist candidate gets 48.1% of the vote, and the communist candidate gets 48.2% of the vote. The rest of the percentages goes to third party and fourth party candidates, but this is the main thing here. The communist candidate has won his election, and immediately the Brown Team is a little bit mad about this because how did everyone else outrig us in this election? Well, the truth is that the Polish government may have been in on it. Sure, they're centrist, but they're also smart. They don't want to get involved with the Brown Team's antics. so let's rig our election to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's exactly what they did. So Poland is now a full-on communist country. It's not necessarily dictatorial yet, but we might see that soon. Remember that the Norwegian country is also experimenting with leftist ideology, not necessarily communism, maybe not socialism, but something of that sort. They are still at this point a democracy though, unlike these two. These two, not so much. Anyway, the brown team is now a little bit worried about their future. Poland's elections were kind of like their last hope for getting access to the Great East, and now they kind of have this solidified iron curtain around their country, of which they cannot go that way. They've already gone up this way and invaded Britain. Going to war with Ireland probably isn't a good idea. That's how you get a coalition formed against you. So your only other option really is to go down south. However, France is your underling, so you probably shouldn't invade them. So what does the brown team do? Well, they go silent for a little bit, and they start building up their economy and their military. But now it's time for power rankings. I know, it's time for power rankings. Hopefully none of you skipped ahead to this. That would be very sad. Anyway, at number 1 for the strongest country in the world, including both economy, military, and also stability, is India. I mentioned this after World War III. India came out on top of the power rankings. They were unaffected by World War III, at least domestically and directly. They did still feel the economical issues that were presented with World War III, like nuclear fallout killing millions. Of course, that's going to hurt everyone's economy. And on that, by the way, the Great Depression Part 2 is over. The world is now out of that era and is starting to rebuild and getting up in economical numbers once again. Anyway, at number 2, we have the Dutch team, the brown team. And these guys were involved in World War III, but just at the end of it, they kind of snuck their way in and did some really big damage. But now at number 3, we have the purple Italian team, the Mediterranean Empire. Maybe one day it will be this one right here. They are number 3. Now I do want to make clear real quick, there is a pretty sizable gap between number 2 and number 3. The world is very weak right now. There isn't a lot of major powers, or I guess superpowers. In fact, there are 0. There's only regional powers. The World War III completely dismantled the superpower system. So the regional power in India, for example, is of course India. Over here in East Asia, it is China. In Africa, more specifically North Africa, of course you have West Africa. In the Horn, it's these guys. In the South, it's South Africa. South America is Brazil, pretty much all of it, and in America it's a little bit more interesting. We'll talk about that soon, but you get my point. But there is just a pretty sizable gap between these two. At number 4, we have China. Now, China was involved in World War III. They were previously a superpower, but they got wrecked by nuclear bombs, and they are in a rebuilding stage, meaning that they have dropped tremendously from the top, and they're now ranked at number 4. At number 5, we have the American country. Now, this is a little bit surprising, but I do want to say once again that there is a pretty sizable gap between number 2 and number 3. In America, they did see fighting in World War III, but it wasn't in their major populated areas. It was more so just over here, where there really aren't that many people. So they were able to rebuild quickly after the war and have made themselves into a pretty strong industrial power. At number 6, we have the West African country. Now, I do want to say that number 5 and number 6 are pretty much almost interchangeable. Now, the West African country has a lot more experience in war and a lot more experience in just kind of like nasty side of being a country, whereas America has been relatively peaceful in its existence. So I guess you could say that these two are fairly interchangeable. If I had to go back on myself, I would say that the West African country is probably a little bit stronger than the American one. So let me just do some quick little yep. All right, there's our number 5 here. There we go. Let me do that. Just switch those two. At number 7, we have Norway. Now, Norway is a pretty strong country on paper. They have a very good military. They are just kind of limited, though, by their geography. They don't encase a lot of super valuable land, and they don't have any opportunity to expand either. But they are very stable and very strong militarily. Just on the economical side, they are a little lacking. At number 8, we have the Vietnamese country. Pretty self-explanatory. They just got a ton of valuable land. At number 9, we have Brazil, which is pretty much right where I'm doing these power rankings, but they have solidified a lot of their power recently and have gone fairly expansionist in recent history, and they've made their way into the top 10 powers of the world. And finally, at number 10, we have the green team in Central Asia. Now, there is a country that should be in this list, but is not. There is a reason it's not on this list, and it's because of one of the factors that I mentioned when I talk about how these power rankings are done. Military, blah, 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 blah. There is a country that should very obviously be on this list because it encases a ton of land, maybe at its historical height, and just recently got done with a war in which they won. They should be on this list, but they're not, and like I said, it's because of a reason that I've already talked about. So I'll let you guys kind of guess what that country is in the comments below, but something will be happening to it in the next episode. But this is our top 10 as of now. If we were to do military rankings, this list would look a lot different because a certain somebody would find their way into the top 10 in military rankings, but because of other issues, they are not in the top 10 overall. So remember this with all of your heart, because this will be important for the next couple of episodes. Now though, we're heading over to North America, a very small event happening here, but still something worth talking about, and that is California's entrance into the NATO organization, the North American Trade Organization, not the NATO that we know in real life. This is of course the economic alliance that includes a lot of North American nations and is still gaining popularity into Central America. Speaking of Central America though, you know these terrorists right here that have their own state somehow? Well, they're now engaging the Mexican country. These two are at war. And this was a long time coming. There were a series of disputes that have existed for a very long time, but most recently with the fall of Texas, it has created even more issues between these two countries, and it's boiled over, and now they're at war. In the first couple of days of the war, we see the terrorists have a ton of success in their campaign against the Mexicans. Mexico, on the other hand, who was kind of unprepared for this war, they will kind of struggle to fight back against the terrorists. They take down one province, but this province was fairly abandoned at the time, and start moving up the southern coast, but compared to the gains that the terrorists are making in the north, it's not enough. Additionally, over here in this part of the country, they're making some pretty large gains. Eventually, the terrorist organization's leader will go on to national television and be like, hey, if you just let us connect up our land, we'll stop this war. And to that, Mexico says no. Now, you might be wondering, why doesn't Mexico just wipe this thing off the map with their nuclear supply? Well, the world has taken a very sharp turn on nukes. They are incredibly unpopular. Even in countries like the Brown Team in the West African country, they don't like nukes. They're very against using them, and they will only ever use them as a very last resort, and even then, they may not. We saw millions of deaths with the use of nuclear bombs in World War III, and the world doesn't want to go through that kind of catastrophe again, so they're just kind of not going to use the nukes that they have. Once again, there is a unofficial limit on nuclear bombs that is 30. That was established by the Organization of States, but as we know, that collapsed in the previous episode. So technically now you can go past 30, but I don't think a lot of countries are going to do that. I don't even think these countries are going to manufacture any more nukes. So that's just a quick little update on the rhetoric around nuclear bombs in this world. Anyway though, back to the fighting. Just because they can't use nukes doesn't mean that they won't carpet bomb the terrorists. A certain US president or two would very heavily support that. But up north, the Mexicans just can't gain ground on the terrorists. They're simply losing way too much land too fast. And this kind of makes the Mexicans wonder, who is helping out the terrorist organization in the war against us? Well, that mystery will never be solved. Let's just continue fighting. Even more progress is made by Mexico in the south, and eventually they are at the terrorist organization's expansionist claims. They will start to push into this area and start to liberate their own territory. Oh, but you thought fighting a terrorist organization was easy. Nope, these guys can just pop right back up in their own territory. It makes no sense, and Mexico is maybe considering using this. Oh, don't you dare. So never mind. Instead, they will now focus on a defensive effort, meaning that they'll push back a little bit in the north, but their main goal now is just to stop the advance of the terrorists and try to strain them into a war of attrition. They will attempt to stop this expansion down south, but will be relatively unsuccessful. And at the end of the day, the organization is able to link back up with its southern claim. However, though, they do lose this one once again, and the Mexicans do a pretty good job at stopping any reoccurring issue. Over the next few months, this war will be very, very slow. Very few gains made on each side. But something important to note that is that the American industry, specifically the war industry, is seeing unprecedented levels of income. Anyway, after the radical people within Mexico start getting a little too radical, the government will make a decision to make peace with terrorists, which is, unsurprisingly, unpopular with the people. It seems like people just can't make up their mind on how radical they want to be. At the end of the day, though, the negotiations are had and a new treaty is drawn up to redefine the borders between Mexico and this organization. And the deal looks something like this. The terrorist organization will be getting all of these provinces here, and the Mexicans will be getting both of these provinces here. So all in all, the terrorist organization, you could say that they definitely won this war and have connected all of their claims together, but at the same time, the Mexicans also have settled all of the disputes that they've had with this organization, so there are no longer any border disputes. This is the official border between these two nations. And now this organization is seeking sovereignty. Now right now they lack outer sovereignty a lot. Almost nobody recognizes them except for like a few states, like, believe it or not, these guys. And their allies, of course. The brown team recognizes them. I wonder why. And once again, just a few nations scattered about. But now they want official recognition. They just beat back Mexico in a war. So like, hey, we can do it, so give us what we want. Give us recognition. And now, instead of referring to these guys as the terrorist organization, we can now just call them the West Mexican country. America officially recognizes them, and this starts a movement for a lot of countries within America's sphere of influence to also recognize them. So basically everyone up here, which is a little bit surprising considering that these guys are democratic countries. This is like the strongest area for democracy in the world, in Canada and in California, ironically enough. Everywhere else is a radical mess of just ideological craziness. North America though, in Canada and California, it's pretty chill here. These guys will start to gain recognition, and eventually they could be considered an actual state, becoming the West Mexican country. Good for them, but also maybe not good for them since they're terrorists. You know, Brazil recently went fascist. They now have a fascist government. They elected it, and the leader went ahead and consolidated all of his power and turned Brazil into a dictatorship. And as we know, this is the age of aggression / expansion, and the fascists are particularly keen at doing this. So Brazil will be declaring war upon the northern Venezuelan / Colombian country. Now, what is there to say about this teal country right here? Honestly, not much, if anything. I don't think I've ever talked about these guys before. I don't know what their government is like. I don't know how strong they are. Well, actually, I do. I can gauge that. They're probably like the 5th strongest country in South America, maybe 4th, but completely outshadowed by Brazil, whose military has been preparing for this for quite a while, since that leader was elected at least. And their forces are focusing in on the northern coast, kind of going around the lush rainforest area, and just taking out these major cities one by one as they snake around the coast. Now, these guys are going to call out for help. They are going to go to America. They're going to be like, hey, can you come and save us from the Brazilians? America doesn't want to get involved in any kind of war. They're on their peaceful kind of set right now. They're just ramping up industry. So they say no. These guys will then go to Mexico. Mexico says no, they just got out of a war. They'll plead with other South American nations, but simply none of these guys want to fight a war against this guy. So unfortunately for Venezuela, they're kind of cooked. You can look overseas. I don't think Europe's going to help you. Maybe the Square team would. They request supplies from them. They get a few, but definitely not enough to fight against the fascists, who appear to be getting supplies from foreign countries as well. Probably you. You're behind this, aren't you? Anyway, Brazil will now reach over to this. I should know the name of this, but I don't. And from here, they will send special forces across and towards the capital of the Venezuelan country, and this is where we see the bloodiest fighting in the war. While the approach on the capital is occurring, special forces in the Venezuelan army are able to kick the Brazilians out of the lush area of their country. This gives them access to more resources to fuel their war effort, but ultimately, they didn't get back any of their economically valuable area up north. They can try, they certainly can, but they are not strong enough. And eventually, Brazil will capture the capital of this country, and they will go immediately into peace talks, hoping to survive this confrontation. And in this peace treaty here, Brazil will be putting on some weight. A lot of weight. They annex over half of Venezuela / Colombia and pretty much destroy this country's hopes of existing soon. They also take over present-day Trinidad and Tobago and other surrounding islands that the Venezuelans owned. But this is our new border in South America. Brazil is becoming very large and very powerful, and Venezuela is kind of left in a very bad economical state. They may not be able to survive on their own for much longer, so they immediately start to look for security guarantees by other countries. They go to America saying, hey, can we form a defensive pact? America, of course, will say no to that. They don't want to get involved in any kind of war. Mexico, same thing. They just got out of a war. And a lot of the same points that I had earlier, a lot of countries just don't want to get involved in any kind of war. So these guys will be left on their own, and we'll have to see what happens to them. It's probably not going to be good, I'll say that much. But this kind of serves as a wake-up call for South America because, hey, Brazil is incredibly strong compared to the rest of us. As we saw in the last episode, they were within the top 10 strongest nations in the world, including economy, military, and stability. So what's really stopping them from taking over the rest of the continent? And if you really think about it, America probably doesn't want this to happen. Now, of course, this America isn't the same America we have in real life. It has nowhere near the same amount of influence, even in this current year, which is like 2009 probably. Their influence is simply within themselves and north of them. That is where America has influence. Everything south of them is out of their control. Of course, Mexico has their own influence, and that extends all the way down into Central America. But everything down here is under Brazil's influence. So there's really no saving grace for South America. They might be in a little bit of trouble, especially if they start getting friendly with Africa. Speaking of Africa, we have a few things happening here. For one, the West Africans are doing a very good job at pressuring different countries to join their economical alliance, now expanding it over to the pink team and the green team over here. And on the other side of things, the Triangle Alliance also expands, now including this purple country as well as this orangish country down here near South Africa. And now when we take a look at Africa, we can see that it is very divided between two economical alliances, which are catered to both the North and the South, which is very interesting. Now you might notice something here that is fairly obvious. It's that the Horn of Africa country is not in an economical alliance. So why don't they go ahead and fix that? On paper, this country is strong, and that's only because of its military and its government. Of course, it has a fascist government which has consolidated its power. Ruling this country is a hereditary thing, so remember the leader's son came into power after he died. It will be the same thing for generations as long as they exist. So the government is strong. Their military is of course top 10. I said that in the last episode, but their economy is the thing that's kind of bringing them down. They are spending a lot of money on certain endeavors. Don't worry about that. But they just simply aren't very economically strong. So they will officially adopt the same currency as the rest of North Africa and will join up in this economical alliance, marking a huge momentum swing for this country, which has been fairly isolationist for a while, but now, as we can see, they're starting to open up, and they're about to open up this guy's border. A few days after joining this economical alliance, the gold team will send its military up into the peach country. Remember, these guys were allies with the old empire in World War III. They fought alongside the Square Alliance, but now without the old empire, they are obviously unprotected, and they're not even in the Square Alliance anymore. So fighting back against the gold team's military is almost impossible. Like I said, these guys have an extremely strong military, and they will simply just kind of go about to this guy's different cities, and eventually will start heading towards their capital city, but not before getting their recently acquired ally in the purple country to go ahead and start taking land as well as they capture a major city and start putting in work over here on the western front, eventually meeting the capital city from the other side, and together they manage to capture it. This is a weird day for the gold country. They've never really worked with anybody like this before, especially in a war. They've never fought alongside other types of troops. And something to notice here is that these two countries have different religions. Mostly. It kind of overlaps in some areas, specifically in like their southern area, but a majority of this purple team country is under this like pinkish religion. Of course, it's all the same religion, but I've said this countless times, but it's just like a different branch. Like how Christianity has Orthodox and Catholic and Methodist and so on and so forth. It's exactly like that with the red religion. So it would be very interesting to see how the gold team justifies working with people of the other sort, since they are simply just the pink team religion, and the pink team religion is only native to their part of Africa and sort of over here. So yeah, we'll have to see. But as for the rest of this war, it's well, it's going to be over very soon. The gold team wins, and the peach team is fully invaded, and now we can take a look at a peace treaty. And in this peace treaty, we see this country getting completely divided, with the purple team getting this land over here, and the gold team getting everything else. And it now fully exerts itself up into southern Egypt, which is kind of terrifying. But goodbye to the peach country. They will be remembered, and yikes for the rest of Africa, because I don't think these guys are going to stop their expansion anytime soon. I mean, they will for this episode, but who knows what will happen in the next episode. Anyway, we got to do some stuff on this layer real quick. If you don't know, then don't worry about it, but yeah, gotta go ahead and just this is all within their own territory, so just don't think much about it. Just say goodbye to these colors permanently. Very messed up, but we'll get a status update on this in another episode. Anyway, let's hop up to Russia. These countries are all brand new. They've been very silent, and they have been working on their economies, militaries, industries, so on and so forth. They have basically just been working to establish themselves as presentable countries. They're all democratic countries. None of them have had this radical ideology shift just yet. That is until today. Because the events in Poland, which were the Civil War and the elections, have influenced these three right here to take on a different approach. They all want to reestablish Russian glory. They want to bring back Russia. This might be exciting, but there's an issue. All three of them want to bring back Russia under their country. In other words, they're having a little bit of a succession crisis. I'm Russia. No, I'm Russia. Actually, no, I'm Russia. Actually, wait a minute. I'm Russia. Actually, there's a pretty good claim that I'm Russia, and you can kind of see how this is becoming an issue. So how about this? How about we all are Russia? But then how exactly is this going to work? Because we can't have 4 Russias. How about we all form a Russian alliance, a Russian empire, a holy Russian empire? And thus we have the formation of an alliance between a series of Russian countries, for now just these 3. They call themselves, ironically enough, the Russian Federation or the Russian Union. They all recognize that they want to be the successor of Russia. However, in the current state of the world, it would be almost impossible to work this out without fighting, and these guys can't fight. They're too young, they're too inexperienced in war, and they certainly don't have the military and economy to do it. So now they're working together under one union, except they all still have their sovereignty. So in that case, how exactly are they going to lead? They don't have a specific country that is leading this alliance. So how about we have elections to determine which country leads the alliance? It's still democratic, and if we set this up correctly, we'll make sure that not a single country can repeat terms. So every election cycle, there will be a new leader for this alliance. And if you haven't figured it out already, this is our equivalent to the Holy Roman Empire in its own WICSO way. Immediately, these guys will extend their offer to all former Russian republics, which includes this one, that one, this one. You guys know where Russia's at, right? But we will definitely be building more off of this in coming episodes. This is just the foundation for the Holy Russian Empire. I don't know if I really want to call it the Holy Russian Empire because it's not necessarily holy. I mean, they all do share the same religion. That's cool and all, but religion isn't necessarily a big factor for a lot of nations in the world. It's not really what they care about, except for like these guys. But once again, I said this a few episodes ago, religion and ethnicity are kind of interchangeable in this series, and that's my own fault. I didn't set it up correctly when I started the series, and I can't really fix it now. But just keep that in mind. Religion, ethnicity, kind of the same thing. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump over to East Asia, specifically in Korea. We have some business here. In the last episode, I did my top 10 rankings for the world, and Korea did not make the list. And I also mentioned, and I made sure to make this clear, that there was a country that should be on this list that isn't on that list, and that country is Korea. They should be a top 10 power. I mean, look at them. They're old, they have a great economy, great military. How are they not in top 10? Well, remember, the 3 factors in these power rankings are military, economy, and stability. Korea has horrible stability. It's terrible. It's so bad that they didn't make the top 10, nor did they make the top 20 or the top 30. In fact, Korea's stability is so bad that they're in the middle of a civil war. Civil wars have been very prevalent as of lately, and that's in large thanks to the radical ideological movements that are happening, communism, fascism. It is splitting countries in 2, quite literally, and that's exactly what we see in Korea. There are a few fronts that we see. First of all, we see the pro-democratic movement. This includes areas in China, which were just recently annexed, all of these provinces, and it's not exactly the same as what they annexed, but it's pretty close. And then it's their Japanese territories. Japan is a democratic country at this point in time, so democracy is pretty popular north of them up into Hokkaido and into the Kuril Islands, into this part of Siberia. Is it Kuril or Kuril? I think it's Kuril. K-U-R-I-L, Kuril? Kuril, whatever. The second movement that we see is the communist movement. And this is extremely popular in the northern parts of Korea, right where the dark gray country used to be. It's just further away from the central government up in the poorer provinces. And as we know, with the farmers union, poorer countries tend to lead towards communism. And even what we saw with the farmers union, the whole reason this thing exists is because the farmers of the once yellow country tribes, I don't know if I want to call them, they're not tribes. The farmers of the once yellow civilizations over here in this area treated their farmers very badly, and eventually they broke away and formed into what this beautiful country is. They went communist eventually, and now their influence is influencing these guys to also do something similar to what the farmers union did and break away from their urban overlords. But we're not done yet. This is all about ideology. The fascists need to be talked about. Now, the fascists are very popular in southern Korea, interestingly enough, and parts of eastern Korea, specifically over here. They also have a small movement towards China. But this is what our map looks like. This is what the Korean Civil War looks like. And I gotta tell you right now, it's not gonna go too well for Korea for multiple reasons. First of all, China is right here, and China is gonna look at this as an amazing opportunity to go and get their land back. Now, there is one slight issue, and that is that Korea and Vietnam are in an alliance together, meaning that Vietnam has an obligation to protect Korea in scenarios such as this one. However, the timing couldn't be more perfect for a country like China, because Vietnam is struggling to re-annex its former lands. South China is rebelling against it, and this movement is extremely weak, but it is still powerful enough to distract Vietnam from helping Korea. And this moment is so perfect for China because they could really work this in two ways. First of all, they get their old land back. Second of all, you fund these guys and you might even get your old ally back. Now, it is unlikely that the South Chinese will win this war, and that's simply because Vietnam is a top 10 power, and they'll push back, but China will use this opportunity to declare war upon the Koreans. Korea will cry for help from their ally in Vietnam. Vietnam will say, we will help you when we finish off our rebellion. Basically, their armies will just continue to march north, but won't do so until all the orange team is eradicated, meaning that China has a very small window to do what they need to do. So they go to the pro-democracy forces and they're like, hey, how would you like help from me? And this is extremely good for the pro-democracy forces. China is a top 5 power in the world at number 4. This basically guarantees that the democratic forces will win their respective front. Korea knows this. Korea knows that they are in trouble. The first set of fighting happens over here with the democratic forces moving out from their territory. They will focus on capturing these 2 major cities and do so very easily. The communist and the fascist forces will start to fight each other. Go figure. And this gives ample time for the Koreans to go ahead and start pushing back the communists, taking 2 major cities and heading straight north, taking another. I can't see the major cities because of the yellow, which is kind of fun. It's like, whoa, where will we find a major city? Oh, there's a few. Down south, the Koreans are successful in pushing back the fascists in the south, which is their stronghold, and they are able to push them out of this major city and province. The communists will finish off the fascists over here, but will also start to push back the Koreans in the north. And to make things worse for Korea, the communists and the Democrats will come together, and they will basically sign a non-aggression pact saying, hey, we will both fight for our independence from Korea, not under one flag, but in a way that is kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They're not working together, but that philosophy is at play. Anyway, the democratic forces will now push south and disconnect this province from the rest of Korea, trapping a large number of Korean troops. Don't worry though, because the fascists just got kicked all the way out of Korea, meaning that fascism has lost. Let's get a quick update on South China. Are we serious? So the Vietnamese are maybe purposely going slow. Maybe they don't want to fight China. If you really think about it, Vietnam is in a horrible situation here. Not only are they fighting off a group of rebels, but their ally is getting pummeled in a war against a power that they cannot fight right now. Remember, during World War III, Korea and Vietnam jointly jumped China. They were funded by a foreign power who I still will not name, but they were strong enough to where that they were able to combine their forces and topple China with some luck from the people overthrowing the Chinese government. But now at the present day, when China has rebuilt a little bit and isn't fighting against Russia and the old empire, they can more so focus on the regional fighting, meaning that they would probably do some serious damage to Vietnam and Korea. And at the end of the day, Vietnam is just happy with what they have now. So how about we don't fight against China? And that's exactly what they're doing. So they're just taking their time and ensuring that they don't have to join this war, leaving their ally to die. Pretty messed up, but that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. The rest of the Korean War will go as such. The democratic forces consolidate power and move into the peninsula, threatening the capital city. Meanwhile, the communist movement will become even more popular up north, and they will sweep all the way down into this side of the peninsula, taking 3 major cities. And at this point, the Korean government knows that it is in a horrible spot, and they decide to surrender over to the rebellion forces, agreeing to give them independence and even to recognize these new countries that are about to form. So let's take a look at what Korea does. Oh, and also this rebellion is gone. They wiped them out as soon as Korea surrendered. Makes you really think, huh? And in this peace treaty, we can see that Korea is shown no mercy. Look how they've massacred my boy. It's not good for Korea. First of all, the communists will be getting all of this land. It's a big chunk of land, and a lot of it is around the coastal areas, meaning that there is a lot of area for economical opportunity. China will be getting their pre-World War III borders back. It looks something like this, I believe. Next, we will see the democratic forces get their own nation, which will look something like this. They have a pretty weirdly shaped nation. However, this is just kind of how it worked in the peace deal. There were a lot of disputes between them and the communists about these 3 provinces here, since support for both ideologies is pretty similar in these 3. It's about split 50-50, but at the end of the day, this is what they managed to work out in the peace deal. But finally, jumping over to Japan, you'll see that the northern Japanese isles are now all independent under one nation, being the brown team. No, not this brown team. or that brown team, or this one, nor that one, or this one. You get the point. But an independent Japanese nation, like I said, and they are now all on their own. It'll be interesting to see how they interact with this guy down here. Remember that these rebels were democratic and that this part of Japan is also democratic, meaning that there probably won't be any hostilities between these two anytime soon. But now it's time to set up the capitals of these new nations. The purple team will have theirs down here. The communist team will have theirs right here. And finally, the Japanese country will have theirs right here. And those are our new countries in East Asia. Korea is extremely weak now. They are not even a top 15, top 20 power. They've fallen so far, and that's because of their stability. But now they're going into an era of rebuilding. They're going to rebuild their economy. They're going to try to rebuild their military. And they're also going to try to stabilize their country because it is extremely hectic right now. Very radical, very split, but still mendable. It can be fixed. Now, like I said, there is a pretty big philosophy that is at play here in this post-World War III world, and that is that there are no superpowers to keep the regional powers in check. One of the best things that Russia has done, it has kept Central Asia from exploding and leading to millions of deaths, but obviously Russia is not present. So these guys started to hate each other again after World War III. They officially broke up the cross-team alliance, and now they're going to go to war. More specifically, the green team is going to go to war with the pink team, their former ally. Now remember, the green team is technically the founder of the Cross Alliance. Now Russia became the leader of it after they joined, but this is the country that founded the Cross Team Alliance. And remember, they also allowed for the pink team to join that alliance as a way to fend off against the old empire. These guys were allies. Not anymore though. No, we're straight back to the Central Asian bloodbath. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and lie. This country, the pink team, is extremely weak. They didn't contribute anything really in World War III. They were just kind of like a buffer zone if needed. And they're only really good for their resources. They don't have a lot of people living there. Their economy is trash. Right now, the green team is focusing in on the area of which the lime team, they weren't really lime. They were like a tealish country, but they used to exist right here, and then they got formed up into the pink team. So they're focusing on their old lands right now, but eventually, of course, they will make their way over to the capital of the pink team and take it with relative ease. And as you can see, most of their population area is already under their control. They will go ahead and spout out and take this major city though, which will officially cause the pink team to surrender over to the green team. Have you guys ever wondered what the oldest border on this map is? Like, I sometimes wonder, like, what is the oldest border? Like, what's the most longest lasting border? It changes so much that I don't honestly think that there is one, because the old empire really messed it up over here. It's honestly probably the border between India and this country. I wouldn't account for anything over here. Maybe the border between France and the brown team. Honestly curious. If one of you guys want to do research, now please don't waste too much time on this, but go back and try to see what the oldest border in the world is and compare it to this map. Let me know in the comments. But like I said, let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, we have the pink team losing all of its valuable land over to the green team as they annex all of this territory. They also annex the pink team's capital city, meaning that they're going to go ahead and have to find a new one. Luckily, they have a few options, and they will choose the one that is furthest away from the green team's border. And now taking a look at the green team, we can see that they have become quite large. In fact, they're probably one of the larger countries in the world. That is when you're considering how many countries there really are. But yeah, they've definitely gone back and started to reclaim a lot of their previous land. Now, it did wrap all the way around the Caspian Sea into Caucasia. They were like a complete Caspian empire at one point, but they were forced out here to the east, and then they kind of regrouped back down, and when the old empire fell, this thing kind of took off. But yeah, once again, without a superpower to keep them in check, they are just going to keep expanding. They are a fascist country at this point. That is official now. I don't know if I've said that already, but the green team is now officially a fascist ideology. They are under a dictatorship, and they are thinking about joining the Parallelogram Alliance. However, they have no commitment just yet, so something to watch and keep in mind. Now, on the topic of the Parallelogram Alliance, they are going to come together and they're going to do a jumping of Egypt. This country just got its independence from the old empire a few episodes ago. Unfortunately for them, they are a democratic country. They don't have any elections anytime soon, and the fascists are hungry, so they're going to get invaded by all of them. All three fascist countries in this area are invading. And I could spare you the details, but I don't think you guys want me to. I think you guys kind of like this weird fascist expansionism that's happening in the series right now. Kind of concerning. But hey, who am I to judge? I'm going to judge you. Anyway, the gold team will continue its expansion into Egypt. They are the primary invader here. Go figure, they are the leader of the Parallelogram Alliance after all. And with the help of Libya over here, they will go ahead and capture the capital city of Egypt, which will officially force them to surrender a few days later over to the fascists. So let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, we see that the Egyptians get completely partitioned. Now, there is going to be a puppet state formed here that is going to be led by the African country right here. But first, let's take a look at the claims. So Libya will be getting all of northern Egypt. This is pretty huge and pretty valuable for the Libyans. A lot of economical development here done by the old empire, and they are now annexing that economical development. So this will help them out tremendously in the rankings. The purple country will also get some pretty valuable land that kind of pushes up against the Nile over here. So they annex all of that. And then the gold team will only be getting a few provinces, as you can see here. I think there's only 2. Yep. So they will annex that. And like I said, they will also be getting a puppet state. So here is that puppet state, once again owned by the gold team down here. And Africa is once again, and I've said this over the past couple episodes, but it's becoming very divided between north and south. The fascists are gaining a lot of ground up here, whereas the rest of the non-fascists down here in the south, they have just been kind of chilling in their economical union. It's also important to note that at this very time, every single African nation is aligned in some way. There is the Star Economical Alliance and there is the Triangle Economical Alliance. Not a single nation in Africa is not a part of some kind of economical alliance, meaning that this continent is currently ruled by 2 currencies, which is very interesting to think about. No other continent has this level of, I guess, unity, if you want to call it that, except for maybe North America, but even then, it's only northern North America. So Africa, congratulations, you're doing something that a lot of the rest of the world is not. But anyway, it's time to jump up here to Russia, because this HRE thing is getting a new member. Remember, we talked about this in the last episode, but Russia is essentially doing its own version of the Holy Roman Empire, just in a WICSO sense, and even in a modern day sense. It's probably around 2011 at this point. I'm 5 years old in this series, maybe 6 depending on what time of year it is. A few countries in the Mesopotamia area are a little bit worried about the Green Team and their, what appears to be an inevitable expansion into the center of Mesopotamia. Now, the capital region is protected by 4 major powers, being of course India, the brown team, Norway, and China. Those are all countries within the top 10. Norway is, I think, number 7 is what I put it at in the power rankings a couple episodes ago. But the other 3 are all top 4 powers. So the green team isn't getting into the core of Mesopotamia anytime soon. And it's important to remember that this right here, this is the red team. It's just divided up right now and occupied by 4 nations. So I do want to say that there is a very real possibility that we see the return of the red team in the future once these guys stop occupying this core territory. But until something can knock them off of it, that's probably not going to happen for a little bit. But the green team, they basically want to go into Mesopotamia and take over it. They don't want an old empire to ever come back. They want to keep this regional power that they have acquired. They are the 10th strongest country in the world after all, and they don't want anyone telling them that they can't be the 10th strongest. Now, the only country that really rivals them in their respective area is India, and they are still separated by the orange country. And I guess you could say like the red team could rival them, but the red team, they look big, but they really aren't that strong. Aside from that, your next closest, strongest country is actually probably China, and then the gold team, but these guys are both fascist. And we know that there are existing diplomatic talks between these two. So these guys don't have a leash at all. They could kind of go crazy. Because instead of focusing on this, we're going to focus on another green country, the Greeks. The Greeks have done something that no other country at this point has done. They have made the communist and fascist ideology illegal in their country, meaning that there are no radical ideologies that anyone can get elected by. There is only democracy. And of course, democracy has different types of forms. There's different political parties under democracy, and those are the only kind of political parties that are allowed within Greece. And this has a mixed reaction amongst the public, because why are you limiting our liberties? But the public of Greece is also pretty smart. They can see how fascism is working across the world, and quite frankly, they don't like it. So Greece is a beacon of democracy over here in the Balkan Peninsula, and this will inspire a few other countries, such as China. China is very similar to Greece. They are also a beacon of democracy over here in the East. They had a very large part in World War II in the decolonization of the world to an extent. They were kind of hypocritical at some points, but we'll ignore that. They are a very long-lasting democracy, and it is at this point in China that they make other radical ideological parties illegal, so no communism and no fascism in China are allowed, and this receives a lot of support within China. Overall, the citizens are pretty much in support of it, so there's no issues, no road bumps. And while this is all good and dandy for China, an unfortunate event happens over here with their allies on the red and the orange team. They join the economical alliance of India. Now remember, there was some distance growing between these two after World War III, with all that happened with China and them pulling out of the war. And those relations still haven't necessarily been mended. They're still not really on great terms. They're still allies, but kind of like how the US is dealing with their allies in real life. The relations are strained. Not gone, but just strained. But them joining up in this economical alliance with India, who you could consider a regional rival to China, is kind of a big blow for them. They also don't have their friend to the south. They lost all their influence in South Asia other than the Philippines, which they still do hold on to for now. And now they just are starting to kind of lose ground over here. They haven't completely lost their allies. They're still in this military alliance, but they are starting to grow apart. India is starting to pull them in to their influence. There's an overlapping influence battle happening between India and China, and while it doesn't strain like diplomacy between the two, there's no like hostilities between them, it does kind of lead to this regional influence war. Not an actual conventional war, that's just terminology. So China is going to need to exert its influence somewhere else if it wants to remain relevant, and there are a few areas of opportunity for that, like the new Korean country, this democratic one right here. I mean, you could probably get them to join your alliance pretty easily. There is the seafoam green country, but you invaded them not too long ago, so maybe don't go after them. Japan is completely unaligned, so there's definitely room for opportunity, but we're not focused on that today. Instead, we're focusing over here, back to Greece. Hey, this guy right here, they did some expansion, but guess what? They have officially come out and announced themselves as fascist. Lovely. Fascism is still extremely popular in this world and is still growing popular, and now another country has fallen to the ideology. They already expanded in the previous episode. I don't remember which one. But guess what? They're doing it again. Their justification for this one is that, well, the green people deserve it. That's why. I mean, what other justification do you need? Let's just invade these guys. And their invasion is going pretty well. They are heading straight towards their capital city. They move out from over here. In this country, will call for help for someone to come and save them. And someone actually does answer this call. It's Greece. Greece answers the call. Greece just banned fascism within their country. And now they're going out on a pretty base conquest to destroy fascism in the region. The next closest fascist country to Greece is Libya, but they are separated by the Mediterranean Sea. They do border communists, but the communists thus far haven't really gone super expansionist, so there isn't too much hate for them. But these guys, I mean, they got caught in the act, so here comes the Greeks. And the Greeks, they don't really fight wars very well. The last time they did, they got steamrolled by the old empire. That wasn't necessarily their fault, though. Their allies kind of sold them out. Here, though, they catch the Anatolians by surprise, and they do manage to capture the capital of this light green country, but the Greeks manage to capture their capital. And all of a sudden, this whole fascism idea, which is very newly found in Anatolia, is extremely unpopular with the public because we just lost our capital city and tons of valuable coastal area that was very well developed by the old empire. And the Greeks are continuing to move down and around, getting into our core province area, near the front line. Hey, why aren't you fighting back? You just lost another major city. What are we doing here? There goes another one. All right. Oh, our government's incompetent. Oh, don't tell me our military is incompetent too. Oh no. So yeah, this thing was very flashy, but it's not strong at all. It was blessed with a great economy. It just doesn't know how to use it, and the leaders of this country proved to be very stupid, because how do you fumble this? Literally, the only reason they're losing right now is because their leaders suck. Otherwise, they would have capitulated the other country by now and would have been able to fend off the Greeks to an extent. But yeah, their government is overthrown very quickly, and well, they surrender. So let's take a look at this peace treaty. And no, Greece is not going to uphold its democratic values or liberal values. They're going to take land. They want to basically enforce a lesson upon the people of this country. Don't let fascists get into power. And in this peace treaty here, we can see that the Anatolian country is, well, they're basically destroyed. It isn't a good peace treaty for them at all, and they're gonna lose a ton of land. Greece will annex all of this, including their capital city. This is kind of the lesson they're trying to teach them, like, hey, look what happened. The Lime team over here, they'll basically just get freed. They don't get anything, nothing land-wise. But we do see the reestablishment of this country, which was annexed by the Anatolian country a few episodes ago. So they are back. And I guess you could say that life is good in this part of the world again. Greece has officially gotten rid of fascism in Anatolia, and they're extremely weak. They don't even have a capital city. I'll fix that real quick though. But they are a democratic power now, and they do still hold on to Crete. I know some people do find this very important, but yes, the Crete nation does still exist. It's this. I made sure not to get rid of Crete. Also, something very interesting. You can see like all the different countries that have ruled over this. Like you see the purple from the old empire, the green from Greece, this from, I don't know what that's from. This honestly could be from the purple team in episode 1. Like, I don't know. There are 2 different shades of purple right here. You guys do see that, right? I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this and this. These are 2 different shades. I think this is the old empire and this is the purple team, which has found itself all the way over here. Now we're gonna go ahead and shift their focus just a little bit west to the purple country, which I was just talking about. These guys are communists now, and they have been communists for a few years, and they have been able to make it work, unlike certain countries in real life. It is a form of communism, I guess, that works in this world, but they're also a dictatorship, and we do know from historical records that the purple team likes to expand. Issue is, though, where are they going to expand? They could go to France, but you might make the brown team mad and cause a world war, so maybe don't do that. But there is a country which you used to own, but broke away from you. They're under the same religion as you, and I guess you could say that you have a right to take them back. I am, of course, talking about the dark purple country, which is only dark purple because this guy was purple. What I used to try to do is I used to try to make like the breakaways of countries a similar shade of color. That's why this country is dark red. When I broke away from the red team, I made it dark red. That's why that this southern country is like a darker shade of this gray, or is this beige? That's why the 2 African Union countries were similar colors, and so on and so forth. I think you guys get the point. But these guys are building up a little navy that's going way over here. And the dark purple country is a democratic power. They have been for quite a long time. They were a major player in World War II, and they're old. They're very old. But the purple country is even older. Now, there was a defensive pact that existed, or actually it was an alliance that existed between the French and the dark purple. However, that was broken by the brown team. Actually, it might have been, who broke that actually? I forgot who actually broke that. But I remember that the relations between these 2 countries were severed by way of negotiation. I think the old empire actually had something to do with it. They're still friendly, but they're just not allies, meaning that the French country wouldn't come to the aid of the dark purple country if something like this were to start to happen, where these islands all of a sudden aren't under your control. And then all of a sudden you see that there's a few boats that are landing troops in your country. And these troops are charging out very ferociously and expanding across your countryside, eventually taking yet another major city. And maybe you should mobilize your military against this. But oh wait, the dark purple country enjoys friendly relations with all the countries it surrounds, so it doesn't really think that it needs a military that's very strong. On top of that, they also don't have that great of an economy. And with that small military, you can't really build up on it because once again, you don't have a great economy. And all of a sudden, you're being invaded by a foreign power when you didn't think this would ever happen because you try to be friendly with each other. Long story short, never trust another country because they will defect upon you. And now your capital city is being seized while people in your countryside are being starved. This is brutal. Why don't we go ahead and just surrender? But wait, here come the French. Now, I did say that they weren't holding an alliance with each other. They weren't necessarily allies anymore, but the French people spoke up to their government. They called for the liberation of their former ally, and not only that, but they called for war against the purple team. And since this is a defensive war on the side of the dark purple team, this does not activate the square alliance. French is playing the role of a defender, and the purple team is the attacker. So this is just a one-on-one war. The French will do a pretty good job at liberating major areas of the dark purple team. However, when they get to the coastal areas, that is where they struggle. And unfortunately for the French, this is just a matter of timing. Sure, you did all of this against the purple team. That's because they were refocusing their military campaign against you. And here they come. A very large campaign across the mountains is made by the purple team. This is very crappy for them, but they do it all while fighting back against the dark purple team too. Eventually they take the French coast, which makes France French toast. In comes the Italians, or I guess the Romans, whatever you want to call them. I don't really know what to call these guys. I'm just going to call them Rome because that's kind of cool. And their capital city, I know that's not where Rome is at. Rome is right here, but ignore it. Okay, I know. The Romans continue their pursuit of the French capital city, taking one of the twin cities located in central France. They also finally take the capital of the dark purple team, making them surrender. And all of a sudden, France is fighting a war that they don't need to be fighting. So they also leave the war and settle down with peace negotiations with the Romans. So let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty here, we have a pretty interesting thing happening here. So France loses land, but they also gain land, and the purple team gets a lot of land, and the dark purple team ceases to exist, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and wipe that smile / capital city off of your face. The purple team will annex all of its claimed lands from both France and the dark purple team, including these islands down here. These are pretty important. And France will be annexing the remainder of the dark purple team that wasn't annexed by the Romans. They didn't want this land, and it's not sustainable enough to survive on its own, so it will become one with France. And our new map of Western Europe, which doesn't change very often, is now looking something like this. Now, France is, well, they feel a little stupid about how this war went. There were a lot of stupid decisions made in today's episode, I feel. Not only did they get kicked out of some of their own land by the purple team, but they also lost an ally. That wasn't an ally, but they were still close. They were kind of friends. It was a secret bromance. That's really what it was. But now their, I guess, enemy, now I guess you could say, is right on their border, cutting them off from the Mediterranean. That hurts. The brown team's looking at you like you're stupid. They're very mad about the events. They could have gotten involved, but of course they don't want to start World War IV, so they didn't. But your lapdog's been acting up, so maybe you should keep a shorter leash on it, brown team. We'll see how this interesting relationship between these three countries evolves over the next couple of episodes, but I do want to say that there is something worth noting here, and it could have some pretty dire effects. Anyway, that is going to do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over, and I'll see you all in the next video. And of course, thank you to all our super fans. This includes CTG on YT, WICSO, Euroball, Serminator, Augusto, King Cheese, A Norwegian, RS, Gail Martinez, Australian Geo Guy, America and Canada and UK, Zaylance, Lazo Does Nothing, Freezioi, Laser Tase, Nevada Garbage Trucks, Pablo Sigma Cat, Death Strider X, Hammer Toad 45, and DW Cool Dude. Once again, thank you guys.